Bonjour. I was just trying to reply to drumstick. That's what I'm typing. This is a one-off time we're starting at this time because of our guest. He's due to join us at 9 o'clock. So if you guys are coming for Grant Lavac, he won't be here till 9 or just a little bit before 9. So hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. And what we're gonna do, what we thought would be better, rather than just turn up and Grant's here, and some of you don't know what we're going to be discussing. We got a documentary for you guys to watch. Hold on, let me pull this up. So we got a documentary for you guys to watch. It's roughly about 45 minutes. So I know you guys like the smoke, still in the 420 spirit. It's 420 somewhere. So if you want to roll one up and we'll play this video, it's about 45 minutes long, but it goes into the case. It talks to the, how you doing, John? And it talks to the witnesses and, lays it all down. And then we can, if you guys want to ask Grant some questions when he comes on, feel free. So, hey, Shane Temple. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.
And thank you all for joining us as well. So, yes. Yeah, I've heard about that as well. Have you heard about them?
Well, the scientists.
The Chinese ones. The Chinese ones that are going missing as well.
Yeah. It's just let's just add the numbers up here at the moment. I just like what I was supposed to say about it. It's odd, I have to admit, but it's just a number at the moment.
It is odd. It is odd. Especially in the fields that they're dealing with. But anyways, let's roll on with this documentary. And there's not much I can say about the scientists. I'm kind of like with Nick. It is odd, but what can you say? There's not much you can say about it.
It's not worth doing a 2-hour show on it.
Or in an hour. Because there's not much to say other than it's odd. We can name the scientists that have gone missing. We can say what they've done or what field they work in. We could speculate to say they knew about element. What is that element? Element 114 or something like that?
Well, that's Bob Lazar, mate. No.
Yeah, but that's even being brought into the mix. Everything gets brought into the mix when nobody knows what's really going on. Element 115. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, One True Saxon, how's it going?
That's even been brought into the mix.
It looks like I got herpes there. Look, I was breaking up wood and it smacked right on the side of my lip, and it looks like I got herpes, mate. It's not. I just got a cut. Bloody hurts as well. Anyway, nothing to do with the show, but let's rock on with this documentary, the Westall documentary.
Okay, so this is Westall. This happened in 1966.
Yep.
And the numbers, they tend to different, because when I first researched this said there was 200 witnesses, 200 plus. But then when we watched the documentary, it said there was 400 plus. But still, it's
a lot though.
A lot of people. So here, we'll get the documentary up. Here we are.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to press play. I'm going to crank it up so you can't hear me lighting my thing. Anyways, here we go. That's not too loud, is it?
No, that's right. Hey, CD.
The 6th of April, 1966, started just like any other day in the city of Melbourne. Then something very strange appeared in the sky above the suburb of Westall. It hasn't been explained to this day.
This boy come running in and say, Mr. Greenwood, there's these things in the sky, these things in the sky. We looked up and we just saw this saucer type thing taking off.
It wasn't a plane, it wasn't a balloon, it was nothing like that.
A lot of the kids took off towards where it seemed to go.
All the students were just running all over the place, hysterical. Westall High School as a teaching situation ceased.
My girlfriend and I sat on the fence, climbed the fence, the school boundary, and we were crying, thinking it was the end of the world.
This is a mystery story that has, as its setting, a school. And most of the players were school children. They had this extraordinary experience, which they then tried to share with adults. And a lot of them had a lot of trouble doing that. They were disbelieved, almost stigmatized.
I think, like a lot of other people, I just shut up about it because of the ridicule. And it was everybody. You know, you were a kid, you were making it up. So you just be quiet, and in your mind, you just think, I know what I saw, and no one's ever going to shake me from that. I know what I saw.
I really felt for them as people who had this incredible experience, and yet they haven't been able to make sense of it. This is the biggest mass UFO sighting in Australia, yet it seems to have been suppressed, deliberately kept out of the public view. Like the witnesses, I want to find out why.
You sure that's not too loud?
Guys, is it too loud? Let us know.
About this story has simply been buried, and yet this memory has survived, and it only has to be slightly pricked, and it's like the floodgates open,
Yes,
and all the memories come rushing out.
I
April
was
the 6th.
precipitating various chemicals in order to make crystals, and I just happened to be looking out the window, thinking how to fudge my science report. What I saw directly south was something that I'd never seen before.
We were out playing sport on the oval. One of the kids yelled out, look up in the sky, you know, it's flying saucers. And I remember we all looked up, and it really was a flying saucer. I mean, from what you imagine, a flying saucer, it was a round silver disc, and it seemed to be very low over the school. And I remember kids screaming and running inside.
The student came in, was hysterical, leaned up against a sliding door, screaming, "There's a flying saucer in the oval." And of course, everybody started to head towards the door, and the teacher said, "Sit down, it's not recess yet." And a few minutes later, the bell went off.
Everyone started moving, like a whole lot of zebras being terrified by crocodiles. I went where the herd went. Barbara Robbins was the chemistry teacher at the time. She just grabbed a camera and started clicking.
I went into the staff room. Because I knew I wouldn't have a chance to have a cup of tea any other time, I went to get a cup of tea. And then because I was a smoker, and this is something that has stayed with me for 42 years,
Yes.
I lit up a cigarette. And so I don't know how much I delayed before I went outside.
Everyone just took off out into the oval. In time to see it lifting off from the oval. It was probably, 50 feet or more in the air at that stage.
I see Andrew Greenwood, the science teacher, coming towards me, and he said, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" And he pointed up in the air, and I said, "No, see what?" I have a very, very clear picture of him, and I remember almost exactly what he said. And he said it was up in the sky, it moved at incredible speeds, it hovered, it seemed to go away, and there seemed to be light planes. He thought Cessnas he thought they were actually checking it out from the Melbourne airport, and they were circling around it.
Sort of stopped dead, and stopped dead in the air, and then it just sort of started descending straight down. And I'd say it got down about halfway up that gum tree or above the goalpost and sat there for a while. And then it just sort of lifted straight up and then just took straight off.
This thing went down behind the trees, then it came up. It was like it had become aware of these planes coming in, and it just went woof and just left them like they were standing still.
And then it went across to an area called the Grange, which was a bit of a pine plantation behind the school.
Because I walk around with the Westall story inside my head, as soon as I enter the landscape of Westall, out it comes like a three-dimensional children's storybook. It pops up out of the soil. It's like I've entered my favourite children's story. The Grange was a special place for Westall students. It's where they went on cross-country runs, but it's also where childhood games and hunting for lizards gave way to illicit smoking and steamy liaisons. Going the wrong way. Let's be back here. This flying saucer thing came out of the blue like a bolt. It's intertwined with romping around down at the Grange, out of sight of the school authorities or their parents. It has that sense of being involved with something dangerous or clandestine, and they were part of it.
A lot of the kids took off towards where it seemed to go, and it disappeared down behind the trees. So we all got through this fence and ran towards where it had appeared to land.
Yeah, I think it's a great case.
Tanya and I and this other girl, we were over
Probably
the fence.
one of the best
Tanya
ones
was in
I've
the
heard.
lead, and we ran towards where it was coming down. Tanya! I lost sight of Tanya. She was in front of me.
A couple of girls got there faster than me. I was a bit slow. And they actually passed out. And apparently it did land, because when we got there, there was a great big round patch of like flattened yellow, almost burnt, although I'm a bit sketchy on that. I can't remember if it was really burnt or whether it was just flattened, but it was sort of yellow and the grass was all flattened in a swirly sort of a pattern.
Before I got
It's from Australia.
the disc came back up again.
Not us.
So I stopped chasing it.
We looked up and we just saw this saucer type thing taking off, and it seemed to turn side on and just disappear into thin air.
Well, what about your friend Tanya?
I believe she did see it on the ground.
She did see it on the ground.
So I was given to believe, yes. But I went back to school, and Tanya went back to school, and basically had gone into pieces.
I reckon it's one of the
There was
best I've
definitely an
heard.
ambulance on the Oval, and I was told that she'd been taken away in the ambulance, and that was the last time I ever saw her.
Wow.
She was just gone, and she never came back to school.
That's interesting.
Tanya wasn't the only person who saw the craft on the ground. Before they headed over to the Grange, Victor Zakruzny says 2 objects landed in a grassy paddock where a street is now.
Well, the kids were hanging on the fence there. There's quite a few kids there. It's a high fence, and I got up to the top there, and all you could see is 2 discs, one there and one bit further away, probably 3 metres apart. I could hear somebody in the background saying, "Stay away, don't jump the fence." And so I said, "Oh, bugger, I'm going over the fence." The craft probably would have been about there. And there was another one set back a bit on an angle, probably just about there. There's a few kids walking around there, and I was the only one on this side. I got up to it to want to touch it, and it was, well, you could feel heat about a metre away coming from. It was pretty warm or hot, and within a minute or so, it just, both of them just lifted up at the same time, about this height. And I seen, oh, that was breathtaking watching that. And then it just gradually lifted up, and then went off towards the pines. I did a rough sketch of it.
Wow, look at that. This is the view from underneath.
That's underneath. There's no seams, no joins. It's just smooth metal. Normally an aircraft has sheet metal, pop rivets, all that sort of stuff there. This looked like come out of a mould or something like that, or one smooth piece of metal. It was just incredible. It's just something like you see in the movies.
But this is more than just cinema. If we look at the possibilities for this story, they are extraordinary. We're talking about the possibility of life coming from another place and just appearing one day in their midst, and then leaving again and leaving everybody with so many questions, but with a new openness to the beyond. If I'd been at Westall on that day, I would like to have raced after that flying saucer and gotten so close to it, to have held it in my hands. But the adults at Westall High School saw it differently.
That afternoon, our principal called a special assembly and told us all not to talk about it.
All I know is the whole school was told off. The headmaster says, all you kids are nuts. It's a weather balloon. Don't talk about it.
I was prepped to tell the students that what they'd seen didn't exist. We weren't allowed to leave the school, at least I wasn't. My job was to walk up and down the corridors and make sure that all students were in their rooms. I was walking back from the West End. There was confrontation between Mr. Sambleby, Barbara Robbins, and a man I'd never seen before. I thought it was a police uniform, but it was just dark blue. It was demanded that she hand over not the film, but the entire camera.
I was near the gate and the police had arrived.
There were journalists outside. The police are being called in to keep the journalists away.
We were told that we weren't allowed to speak to the media in school grounds. After school finished, there was a TV crew outside school grounds, so we undertook an interview with them.
Everyone took off onto the oval.
Now, I can't remember whether it was a principal or a school representative that came out and ordered us to go home and the film crew to leave.
And I'd actually been giving an interview to Channel 9 and the policeman actually walked up to them and said, stop filming and you go back into the school ground. Okay, so that's what I did. I was 12 and a half years old.
Because I was a mischievous sort of person, I was always getting into trouble. I had detention for actually appearing on the show, and then I got detention again at a later date after my picture and story was in the Dandenong Journal. So I didn't go unpunished, but it was worth it.
I now had two new leads to follow, Channel 9 and the Dandenong Journal. I rang Channel 9 first. They searched for a flying saucer story, and there it was. Now all I have to do is find the can with the matching number.
Never heard of that one.
But oddly,
might have done.
There was nothing there.
I'm writing it down.
I was
now.
absolutely devastated, and nobody had any idea where it had gone. It's very frustrating, but the good news is the Dandenong Journal does still exist, and I'm told it's here in the library. It's the only written account I've heard of from the period, so it's really precious.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one. One of my magazines.
Something obviously happened. Some people apparently didn't want the kids talking about it, and that raises all sorts of questions. Why couldn't it have been discussed? Why couldn't it have been talked about openly? And why couldn't anybody find any more information about what it was?
The headmaster, Frank Sambleby, is a key part of the story. He's passed away, but I hope his children, Max and Gail, can shed some light on his
He
behaviour.
is.
Hello, Shane here. Anybody home?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Max? Nice to meet
Hi.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you
Come
very
here.
much. Thank you.
He played 50 games for the Hawthorn Football Club. He was a half-back flanker, and in those days, half-back flankers ran in straight lines, and that's what he did.
He was pretty black and white, and he had a very strong sense of right and wrong. And yeah, if it didn't fit in with what he believed, then yeah, he found it quite difficult.
And this thing would have been seen as something that was disrupting the smooth operation of the school.
And he would have been a skeptic as well. I mean, he didn't believe in supernatural things. He believed in the real life, didn't he? You know, when we were kids, there was a picture on the wall of a Roman soldier standing, holding his spear, and the lava was all falling down from Pompeii, and people in the background were all crouching and running. And Dad said, "See, he's standing there doing his duty." And, you know, that, I mean, as children, we had to learn that discipline was important, respect, all those things, all the old values. And, yeah, he found it really hard as things changed he was pretty judgmental.
There was plenty for Frank Sambleby to be judgmental about. In the 1960s, rebellion at home and on the streets brought many young people into conflict with the establishment. Schools were run like the military, and teachers demanded respect and obedience.
Yep.
Westall High was no exception. I tried to contact some of the teachers, but many have passed away.
I remember the time
As far as I know,
beat you in school.
only the science teacher, Andrew Greenwood, saw the object in the air. Although he's spoken with me privately, he refuses to go on the public record. Several teachers dismissed the whole thing as mass hysteria. The response left students feeling confused and conflicted. Some are still searching for answers.
I want to find
Send
some
it to
sort
me,
of
man.
proof
Yeah,
that this happened, so we don't keep on, you know, getting called silly people. And you know, no one's ever wanted to know the details before. They just think I'm stupid, and you know, they don't want to know the story. I said I've seen UFOs or flying saucers, and they say, yeah, sure. What drugs were you on that day? And you know, I was 13 years old. I was at school in the daytime. I wasn't on any drugs.
Yeah, one true Saxon that told you. Put them all a bunch of
I'd like you
crackheads.
to visualize the area that we've discussed before. You're in the classroom. You're with Mr. Greenwood, who was the teacher there. There's a little fella comes running around and says, "There, flying saucers outside, flying saucers outside." Everybody laughed. And Mr. Greenwood said, "Come on then, let's have a look." See yourself running down the oval.
We're all affected by our experiences that aren't ever properly acknowledged or accepted. As a boy, I was living in a fairly unhappy home. My own father had died, so my mother had remarried and had given me a stepfather that I'd never asked for. I was quite powerless, and no one really seemed to understand what I was experiencing as a child. I never really had anyone talk to me about it. Just having it acknowledged that what I was going through was real, that would have been a start.
I'm tempted.
Even though I know it's true, the more I try to see it again, the harder it becomes, I think. I can see bodies, but I can't see people, faces, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I can still see the trees and the...
Yeah, and the things.
It was... Yeah.
The feelings don't go away. They just get buried and they sort of fester a little bit.
I saw the classroom for the first time, and then I saw heads bobbing, walking across the oval towards the end of the school ground, and then there they were. Still not 100% clear, but I know what they are. They're UFOs.
If they were UFOs, there should be people around the area who can corroborate what the students saw.
Yeah, now this
A headmaster might be able to shut down a high school, but surely not a whole suburb. Within days of delivering my flyers, I'm contacted by a new witness, Paul Smith, who used to work on a property next door to the Grange.
We were loading up for market, and as we were pulling the carrots up, I looked up and I was facing the object in the sky, and I just thought, oh, somebody's got some way of projecting a film of something into the sky. I didn't believe that it was really happening. But my boss turned around and he saw it, and we stood there looking at it for several minutes. A few moments later, the children came over from the high school and they noticed us, they saw us, and they sort of took a while to make up their mind whether they would come onto the property, realising it's private property.
Yes.
And they decided they'd come in anyway, and they did. They ran straight over the market garden, and they crossed and walked down here to this corner. After a while, trucks turned up with, it looked like army trucks.
Right.
And there would have been about 20 guys got out.
About how long after the object had vanished in the trees?
Oh, I think it was only 20 minutes, which is not a long time.
Pentridge, innit?
How did you know they were from the army?
Well, Pentridge, they were already there.
They were khaki-coloured trucks, the covered in patches, you know, sort of that they to hide, you know.
Like camouflage?
Camouflage truck, yeah. And it was the long ones that carry quite a few people, and a couple of jeeps.
So a couple of trucks,
and
a couple of jeeps, and about 20 men in uniforms?
Yeah.
And the uniforms were what sort of uniforms?
Just khaki-coloured uniform.
Just khaki?
Yeah.
No other, don't remember any other sort
Not
of...
that I can remember.
Colours or...
No.
I went looking for a military
Special
expert.
ops.
If the army was able to turn up in just 20 minutes, where could they possibly have come from?
It's quite evident that there was no deployable troops available in Melbourne at the time. The main units were all logistic, the supply battalions and so forth at places like Broadmeadows. There were lots of citizen military forces, today's equivalent of the Army Reserve, part-time units, but they couldn't have responded so rapidly, and nor could they have responded in such a large number. I've come to the conclusion that the first people to respond to the incident at Westall would have been civilians of some sort, quasi-civilians, probably working for defence and probably wearing the sort of work dress that civilians working for, say, the Department of Supply, say, the research and development establishments of the period, the sort of work dress that those personnel wore.
I discovered that other people in uniform were seen in the area on the day of the sighting. Les Medju went to the Grange with his younger sister, but they saw what seemed to be a different unit.
We hid behind this tree, but fortunately this tree, the branches came down to the ground. Here we are, crouched down on our knees, and we can only look every so often as this tractor came around. He was on guard duty. This was a farmer who has decided to help out. We observed 2 army trucks, 2 men in the camouflage, and 2 men in blue uniforms.
We better cover this area.
And it appeared that a soldier was using a metal mine detector. He's walking around sweeping back and forth.
Keep down.
The next time I see them, they turned and they started kicking violently at the ground. The two officers decide then, time to come back. They come back to the truck and they were gone. And then we could enter the paddock. We had no idea what we'd all walked into. We didn't know what those army men were doing. And all I can say, it was just, what is this? To have the army there and all the rest of it, it was something important.
Yeah.
They certainly were not Australian, because Australians were not using camouflage uniforms in those days, in the mid-60s. Nor would they have been British. But the description of the uniforms certainly matches those worn by the United States Air Force in the mid-1960s.
There were American military and intelligence personnel in Australia in 1966 as part of the Vietnam War effort. The Cold War between the USA and the Soviet Union was in full swing, extending across the world and even into outer space.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The space race between the superpowers fueled the public imagination at all levels.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet. Washington, London, Paris.
The fascination with flying saucers persisted all over the world. Australia was no exception.
We only do once a week, mate.
Well, so far, I haven't seen anything even vaguely resembling a flying saucer or even a flying cigar. But thousands of people, in fact millions, do believe they exist. What do you think they are?
They are real, anyway. They come from the other planets. Some of them may come from the center of the Earth.
I haven't seen one close up yet. This is what I'm looking forward to one day.
Yeah, you took a step towards the figures and the object.
We used to invite people who reported sightings to talk about their experience, because if the sighting was a dramatic one, they would feel, I just need to talk to somebody. But if I discuss it with my friends, they say, well, I've been drinking. But they needed to talk to somebody who would take them seriously.
Although society members tried to investigate at Westall, they came up against a wall of silence. All they can now find in their files is a couple of photographs and a sighting report filled in at the time by one of my student witnesses, Joy Tai. They also went to Melbourne Airport to look for the pilots of the aircraft that apparently chased the UFO, but nobody came forward. I decided to do my own investigation. I contacted a retired air traffic controller to find out how a UFO and several light planes could fly so close to each other without a report being made. Who was responsible for controlling the airspace?
Moorabbin Tower was responsible for the area within a 5-mile radius of Moorabbin and up to 3,000 feet. And above that, it was the responsibility of Essendon Approach. If you're in a tower, you have the aircraft in sight all the time. 5 aircraft on the edge of the airspace, 5 by the way, in broad daylight, they should have been able to see. They may have found something that they thought shouldn't be made public and therefore hushed up.
There is evidence that the American government wanted to stifle debate about UFOs. They set up a committee to objectively investigate UFOs, but a leaked memo revealed that the whole investigation was a sham. The government's most vocal critic was the top atmospheric scientist, Professor James MacDonald.
Why has the government taken this attitude, in your opinion?
As a result of the extremely heavy wave of sightings in 1952, the CIA and Air Force became so concerned over the sheer number of reports that were tying up American intelligence channels that they wanted to get this signal out of the system, asked the Air Force, the CIA asked the Air Force for a debunking policy. The literal wording was to debunk the flying saucers to decrease public interest in the UFOs. Regulations were promulgated very shortly that made it a crime punishable with, I think it's $10,000 fine and or 10 years in prison to release any information at airbase level on UFOs. And as a result of that, nothing resembling any scientific investigation has been going on in the past 15 years.
In Australia, we followed the American policy of ridiculing UFOs, so I started searching for other sightings that might have happened around the same time as Westall. I discovered that 4 days before Westall, a witness took a photo from his backyard in Melbourne that matched descriptions of the object above Westall.
Bicycle bell.
Then, just 2 days before Westall, Ron Sullivan was driving in central Victoria when he noticed a strange light display in front of him.
Got up towards it, and holy moly, the whole thing lit up, and the 10-foot area at the bottom sort of come up and met the top, and the headlights of the car was the biggest awesome thing I've ever seen. They just pulled to the right, as if they were magnetised. I could see all the trees on the right-hand side of the road lighting up, and I said, get out of this one. I pulled on the left. And I could feel the back left wheel spinning. I got out of that.
Ron only reported the incident after he heard that a young man died when his car collided with the same tree Ron had narrowly missed 2 days earlier.
Whoa.
A couple of people from the government departments come and visit me. I know one was from the Air Force. They looked at the car, just walked around. I said, well, let's know what you find out. And they said, yeah, we will. We will, Mr. Sullivan. Never heard any more about it.
When I checked out the Royal Australian Air Force's list of UFO sightings for 1966, none of these cases were mentioned, though we know they investigated them. It took 16 years for records to be made available to UFO researchers.
They knew what I wanted to look for, and when I arrived, there was a body of files there that consisted of a couple of very large postal sacks. I kept requesting more and more files, and ultimately I got to a point where I examined a continuity of files that satisfied me that I was seeing a comprehensive picture of the RWF investigation at that time. I had a shopping list of things that I was focused on. And one of the key cases that I wanted to find out about was the Westall case. And surprisingly, with the rest of the shopping list, I was fairly successful. But the Westall case, given that there seemed to be literally at least hundreds of people involved with it that had media attention at the time, there appeared to be evidence that there was a military investigation at the time. There was no Westall file.
The disclosure team was between about 6 and 9 people over the years. As you can imagine, a 4 or 5 year project, as it turned out, needed quite a lot of effort. Literally was looking through hundreds and hundreds of file titles, maybe even thousands in the end. Along the way, we were always looking for files on the Westall incident from '66. We started off with the Air Force, but within the Department of Defence, we also checked out files belonging to the Air Board, unit files from Air Force bases, former Department of Civil Aviation, Air Safety Bureau, CSIRO, intelligence files, ASIO. But the net result is we found nothing in this mammoth volume of government documentation, which would even begin to be a hint that there was something about Westall in the government files. So amazingly, we drew a blank.
The Westall sighting had clearly been erased from the record, but why? I hoped some publicity would draw former authorities out of the woodwork.
Oh, Shane. Channel 10, nice to meet you, Shane. Joy, is it Mark Howe from Channel 10? Nice to meet you.
What we're really trying to get now is the people who are here as police, as soldiers, as scientists perhaps, looking close up at what was on the ground.
Some closure, Joy. How would you get some closure on this?
One thing that we would really like would be that someone either from the police or the military would come forward and say, yes, they were there.
Nobody from the authorities contacted me, but another witness did. Kevin Hurley saw the circles at the Grange on the day of the sighting and went back the next day for another look.
Then when we came to the area where we'd gone through the paddock, there was the Air Force of the Army, a whole group of them there, stopping us from going through into the paddock. Don't come near this in this area. And we just headed off back home.
And did they give you any reason why you couldn't come through?
No. There were vehicles on the paddock, and they had some sort of instrument which at the time I thought looked like Geiger counters. The strong memory I've got is what happened after that. And about a week later, I decided to go back again to have another look. As soon as we got down to where the paddock started, all the grass had been cut, which was quite disturbing.
Wow.
So then we walked through that area to where the circles were. And when we got into the area where the circles were previously, the whole area had been burnt, destroying all evidence.
You asked me whether an R&D establishment would destroy evidence. Yes, of course they would. Bearing in mind that in the 1960s, Australia had great success financially with some of their pilotless target aircraft. Information related to some of these sorts of projects, if it was to be released to the wrong party, then it would have very adverse effects on Australia from a financial point of view. Any surviving documentation would be in Defence Central somewhere, but also probably overseas with the Allied. There may even not be anything left in Australia, because bearing in mind it would have been very highly classified and could well have been destroyed, as so much of that sort of record is after a period of time.
So it's no wonder that I haven't unearthed any official records on Westall, but it's clear the authorities had something to hide.
Just got called into the gymnasium, and then these people spoke, and they just sort of said, "Oh, well, what you saw was sort of an experimental thing, and we just don't want anyone talking about it or it going any further." So,
how many people were there that came, and do you remember?
I think there was 5, from memory.
And they were they men and women, or?
I think there was 3 men and 2 women, from memory. So I'm not 100%
sure. And do you remember if they were wearing uniforms? Some were in uniforms?
No, they're just in plain suits.
In suits?
Yeah.
And did they explain where they were from, who they were?
No, not really. Just a couple of the teachers said afterwards they're from one of these experimental mobs to do with the armed forces and stuff like that. And that was sort of the end of it.
It had to have been something that we were working on, and we knew all about it. We were in on it, even though we mightn't have known the detail. To have responded, that's one of the, that really, to my way of thinking, that's the key, is the fact that we whoever it was, the authorities, responded so rapidly. Now, they must have just about been sitting on the trucks with the engine going. And perhaps they were. Perhaps they'd received technical intelligence that there was something going wrong with this experimental craft, and they weren't sure where it was going to land, but they were ready to go get it as soon as it did land.
It sounds like a rational, logical explanation, but it needs then to be supported with evidence. If you think about how the people described the shape of it, the speed, the manoeuvres that it made, there is nothing around today that comes close to that.
The final proof might be, for example, getting a piece of the flying saucer and examining it, subjecting to scientific examination, and finding that it's of an element that is not manufactured on Earth. Now, that would maybe be the final proof. We haven't got that. So we're still at the circumstantial evidence stage, and whether that leads you to say, well, these are from outer space, they're interplanetary spaceships, or not, is a philosophical question. It's a question of what you yourself feel is proof.
A yellow sign.
I crave the proof that can be held in my hands and touched and smelled and measured. But I think we need to make room for a little mystery in our lives as well.
I reckon somewhere in this area.
I believe truth can exist without proof of it, and I see a real truth in the stories and memories of the witnesses.
Probably.
Even if it doesn't answer the question, what was it that flew over Westall?
What I saw, I believe, is what a flying saucer has left behind.
Professor James McDonald looked for proof in statistical data. His research brought him to Australia a year after the Westall sighting. I'd ordered some of his papers from Arizona University, hoping to find something about Westall.
Wow, what is all this? There's a lot of stuff here.
journal. His trip to Melbourne. But we still hear about Westall. Has to be.
And next, a discussion with Mr. Andrew Greenwood in connection with the Westall sighting. Well, this business about the headmaster, he's the one who seemed to be quite influenced by some pressures to keep things quiet.
He just told me that an Air Force officer had been out to the school, and I was teaching at the time, and he told me that he wasn't going to interrupt my class so that I could speak to them. I promptly told them to get lost together. They kind of had much time with him, because I know I was very friendly with the senior master of the school. He said they were only in his office for very few minutes, and Sambleby had sort of come out fuming and muttering, what rot, and all the rest of it.
It's nice to have somebody telling the RAAF that it's a lot of nonsense and sending them packing. Victims of their own propaganda here.
Yes.
Now I had further corroborating evidence that the Air Force was involved at Westall. But students said other senior authorities also came to the high school.
I was called down to the headmaster's office, and there were two men in the headmaster's office, very well-dressed gentlemen in suits. They weren't introduced to me in person, and I don't know where they came from. From my references now as an adult, I would say they were Asia.
So this is the actual office?
Oh, this feels quite weird, yes. Yes. There was a desk down this side here, and the headmaster was over here on that side, and the two men were standing over there, and I stood with my back to the window. Only one man spoke, and he started off by, we like you to go through what you said happened yesterday. He was firing questions at me fairly rapidly. Then we went into, and we suppose you think you saw a flying saucer. And I'm like, well, I didn't say that. I said I saw an object, and we suppose you saw little green men.
Can you remember how you felt once it was over?
When I was actually in the confrontation situation with the men, felt very, very angry. When I came out, I think I burst into tears. They were certainly Australian government, and I think it was part of their job to keep everything quiet and to not let the facts come out. They knew more than what they were saying. It was their job to squash what was being seen. It was a bunch of kids that saw this, so we would be able to squash this down.
The authorities had found a way to silence the children, but they still had unfinished business with the teacher, Andrew Greenwood. He told me that two officers came to his home and threatened him under the Official Secrets Act. They said that he couldn't have seen a flying saucer at Westall because there were no such things as flying saucers. They threatened to tell people he was alcoholic, even though he wasn't. As a first-year teacher with a career ahead of him, he couldn't take the risk of speaking out. The person who had taken all the risks was Professor James McDonald. His criticism of the government had provoked powerful enemies, but it didn't stop him challenging the establishment with other unorthodox scientific theories. Years ahead of his colleagues, he predicted high-altitude aircraft would destroy the ozone layer and increase the risk of skin cancer. He was invited to address the US Congress, but during his testimony, a congressman made an opportunistic attack. He publicly ridiculed McDonald by saying he believed in UFOs and little green men. McDonald's professional reputation was ruined. James McDonald tried to create a climate of openness where unorthodox thinking could flourish. That's not what happened at Westall.
I remember the assembly that we're all called for.
We weren't even allowed to talk about it in school. We weren't allowed to mention it at all.
There's like 20 people plus in the room at the moment, and there's a real buzz, and everyone's talking about my story. They're talking about the story. And as they're talking it through, they're putting the pieces together. It's wonderful.
What isn't wonderful in the telling of this story is that Professor James McDonald finally gave up the fight for UFO science. Humiliated and broken, he took his own life. McDonald's suicide played on my mind. I began to think about weapons of mass destruction and global warming, where other brave scientists spoke out and were quickly shut down. I want my son to grow up in a world where it's possible to discuss and investigate even the craziest ideas without fear of ridicule or punishment. That's fantastic. Was it something from another planet at Westall? It certainly flew, as if it was. I'm left with the feeling that what people saw was what they said they saw. Something out of this world.
All I knew was what I saw, and it definitely was not any aircraft of the day by any stretch of the imagination, and it certainly was not a weather balloon.
It still would take me to my grave. What the hell was that?
It was amazing, and something that I've never forgotten. But you just sort of had it stored in the back of your mind because a lot of people are sceptical.
The fact that they can travel so fast and that they've been spotted all over the world, landings and very similar stories of these patches of flattened grass or burnt grass. I personally believe that there is something going on somewhere else.
I believe there's life out there. There is. I don't know what they look like, but I'm not afraid of them. I look up at the sky and say, like, where are you people? Come and talk to me.
And that's the end of it.
Fantastic.
Hello?
That was a good documentary.
Yeah, it was really good. I still say this is, the more I hear this story, like in there, I didn't know about the guy that was driving the car. So
yeah, that was new information for me. Yeah, it was good.
Grant will be joining us shortly. I checked my emails and he's got everything, and he said yes, he's looking forward to it. So he will be here shortly, and I picked up one main question I want to ask him. So I got one main question.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at, one thing that strikes me when it comes to any sort of UFO sighting, especially on a mass sighting like this, is the witnesses. Now, before the show, Rebecca, how's it going? Nice to see you. Is the fact that there are so many witnesses, and when it comes to debunkers, they say, well, they're just, they change their stories because they want to sort of put their foot into the actual story. It's like, yeah, but we got so many people that's come forward and witnessed this craft. They're not all grifting off this. Hey, Bob, how's it going, man? Nice to see you. Do you know what I mean? And I've been in this field a long time to understand when someone's sort of lying. And I've been watching a number of documentaries in regards to the Westall UFO sighting, and the witnesses are very credible. Even the teacher, saw the reaction of the kids, especially that one particular kid that came up to him when the sighting literally just finished, sort of buzzed off into the air. It's crazy, isn't it? I have to admit, it's one of the best UFO sightings. Well, we'll say modern times, but it's especially back in the 60s. It's definitely up there for sure. Yeah, it's immensely striking. But the witnesses is what makes this quite credible. Yeah,
it's becoming one of my favorite. It's up there with the Russian one.
Oh, the Ivanovic one. Is that the one with the one that looks like a robot?
Nah, the one with the divers where they went into. I don't think it's Russian. I think it's is it Siberian? There's a lake out there, and they went diving into the lake, and they came across these humanoid creatures.
Oh, Pascagoula. That's the one in
in
Mississippi.
No. It's Soviet Union kind of stuff.
Oh right, have we covered it?
It starts with a B. The lake starts with the B. No, we ain't. That's it. I knew somebody knew it. There it is. That's the one. That's
oh right. Okay. Yeah.
I like that story. Oh, I like that story.
Nice. Yeah, there's some very good sightings. It's kind of strange how we don't really get this sort of sightings today. I think we're so busy shooting them out of the sky, and I think they kind of like scared them off slightly, you know. But in terms of like,
maybe they're fed up of trying to help us.
probably, to be honest with you. I mean, you can make any sort of counter arguments in regards of that, but yeah, I think it's important to look into the past and to understand these incredible sightings. I mean, the last one I would say on the mass sighting would have been Phoenix Lights. I think that was it. Last 1997. Guys in chat, what's like Westall and Phoenix Lights? What would you say would be the modern day of a mass sighting? I'm just trying to think on top of my head. Actually, I'm not too sure.
I'm trying to think.
I'm trying
to think when they had a mass sighting.
But as detailed, like the people in Westall saw a flying saucer. They saw a craft. Do you know what I mean?
Well, guys, the man of the moment has arrived. So I want to introduce. If you don't know, this guy he's a UFO researcher. He's an investigator. Amongst many hats he wears, I give you the legend that is Grant Lavac. Oh, a bit slow, Grant. Sorry.
Gents, how are you? Thanks for having me on. Sorry, I look a little bit puff in the eyes. It's early morning here, but it's good to be on with you. So thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on, man. Because again, it is early in the morning for you. It's what is it, 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Well, I'm usually up around about half an hour, 6:30, because the kids get up then. But yeah, 6 a.m. About now. So got the cup of Joe in hand, ready to go. So I'm all sorted.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. So
no problem.
We know your time is precious. So we're gonna dive in. We just watched a documentary about Westall, and I gotta say it's up there, man. It is up there.
That was the Westall 66 documentary of Rosie Jones that Shane Ryan did, I believe. Yeah, it's a wonderful case. I mean, it's 60 years on. Unfortunately, we're no closer to the truth of what happened on the day of the 6th of April, 1966, and it's such a fascinating mystery because there are so many elements to it that are just classic of a UFO sighting. I mean, it's one of the largest mass sightings, certainly not just in the world, but in the Southern Hemisphere. Hundreds of school children that witnessed it, teachers, members of the general public that weren't on the school property on the day. And then you have a rapid military response shortly after the incident. You've got witness intimidation, confiscation of evidence, and the Australian government, Australian Department of Defence, 60 years on, has never provided any explanation or documentary evidence for what occurred on the 6th of April, 1966. And if it was something so prosaic, why not come clean and be transparent about it 60 years later and give the witnesses some closure and the truth that they deserve? If it wasn't something that was prosaic and the government Department of Defence doesn't know what it was, well, that's a compelling reason for the Australian Department of Defence to revisit its current long-held position on UAP UFOs that, move along, folks, there's nothing to see here, because they've held that position since 1996, when they ceased all of the Royal Australian Air Force ceased all of their investigations into UFOs. So if they don't know what it was on the 6th of April, 1966, well, then maybe it should revisit its long-held position on UAP and follow the lead of our US ally and Five Eyes partner, because the US is taking it very seriously from a national security threat and safety of flight risk. So fascinating case. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I'm originally from Sydney. Moved to Melbourne with my wife about 11 years ago now, and didn't really know a whole lot about the Westall case when I moved here. And someone suggested I maybe look into it, and I reached out to Shane Ryan because I knew he was the principal investigator, and he suggested that I get down to one of the annual witness reunion events that they have at the Grange, the wooded area that's about a kilometre south of the school. And the witnesses, a small number of the witnesses, they gather once a year to kind of, get together, share their recollections and memories. And it's also open to the general public to attend. And I was very interested to get along. And so I took my little iPhone with me, and not expecting that I would ever make a documentary. And the witnesses were just so very giving and generous of their time that I peppered them with I can't remember how many questions I did, but I ended up getting a couple of hours of footage, and I thought, well, it'd be great to put this out there in long form format, so a lot of folks that are interested in the Westall case can watch their commentary in long form format, and maybe it can serve as a good companion piece to the wonderful documentary that Shane Ryan was involved in, and that's exactly what I did. So, and then that began my deep dive rabbit hole, or rabbit holes, into the Westall case, and I'm still pressing for some breadcrumbs to this day, trying to secure documents for release through the Freedom of Information Act, as well as the National Archives of Australia, as have many other researchers over the years. And unfortunately, we haven't yielded any fruit thus far. So the search continues.
Wow.
It's one thing I find interesting, Grant, is the fact that have they actually found the original news footage from that day specifically? Because in that documentary, you mentioned that they didn't find it, but has any been luck recently?
Not that I'm aware of. So Shane Ryan, so Channel 9, which is one of our flagship free-to-air channels in Australia, they had a news crew on site in the afternoon of the day of the incident, and I understand that it was actually one of the students that made a phone call to Channel 9 that day. Clandestinely made a call from a public payphone not far from the school and tipped off the press. And so Channel 9 was there later in the afternoon, and later that evening, there was a story on the late news channel that Channel 9 ran each night about what happened that day. And some of the students recall having actually seen that news that news coverage later that day. But the efforts to locate that newsreel, so Shane Ryan and other researchers contacted the Nine Network and tried to see if they could secure that newsreel for release, and it had vanished. Now, either one of two things had happened. It had been destroyed intentionally or inadvertently, depending on whatever the fire retention policies of Channel 9 were back in the day, or it's been withheld from release. And it's been rumored, I think Shane Ryan or some researchers have suggested that, I think George Simpson may have suggested this, another researcher, that Kerry Packer, who was the boss of the Nine Network for many, many, many decades, that once the coverage aired that evening on the day of the incident, he pulled it. He pulled the newsreel altogether, and it's been withheld ever since. Now that's speculation. I've not seen any documentary evidence of that, but that's one of the claims that's been put forward. But sadly, that news footage has never seen the light of day, which is such a incredible shame, because that would reveal some very telling information, being so close to the actual event, only several hours after the event happened that day. So sadly, no, that footage has not seen the light of day.
It's a shame, because there seems to be a very active. It seems to be a very active cover-up in regards to this case.
There's certainly, without a doubt, there's been a cover-up, and whether or not the Nine Network was a part of that, I don't know. Again, I can only go off you follow the facts where they lead sort of thing, and unfortunately, that's one of the challenges with the Westall case, is there's no audit trail, certainly from the government or the Department of Defense. We have an abundance of witness testimony, and obviously, witness testimony evolves over time. 60 years later, memories fade, and everyone's recollection may be slightly different because everyone saw what they saw at maybe different times that it occurred, and they were positioned at different times around the school or off the school grounds, like Paul Smith, a market gardener. But they're also, all of the witnesses that I've spoken with face to face, they're also incredibly compelling in what they're recollecting, 60 years on. I think I like to think I'm a pretty good judge of character. And when I was talking with these witnesses, I looked them straight in the eye, and they looked me straight back, and they never, their body language did not tell me that they were, retelling a fabrication. It was a very compelling account. Yes, there certainly has been a cover-up by the military that responded on the day, because there has never been any explanation offered by the Australian Department of Defence as to why there was a rapid military response on the day. Now, the fact that there was a rapid military response tells us that whatever was observed in the skies above Westall High School was certainly being tracked, whether it be on radar or they had foreknown knowledge of what it was, whether it was prosaic or whether it was, in fact, completely exotic, potentially NHI tech, being these upwards of three objects that resembled flying saucers. But the fact that there's never been any documentary evidence that's seen the light of day, and more importantly, there was a comprehensive report that was compiled in the week or weeks after the Westall incident by the then Department of Supply, and that report has never seen the light of day. And Shane Ryan, as well as investigative journalist Ross Coulthard, who we all know, was able to make contact with the son of a gentleman who was, in the third or fourth highest position in the then Department of Supply, who was commissioned to investigate the Westall case and compile this report. And the son commented or provided testimony to both Shane and Ross that when his father died, which unfortunately was a few years after the Westall incident, he gave specific and explicit instructions to his wife, the son's mother, obviously, that files, including the comprehensive Department Supply report that he had compiled on the Westall case, was to be destroyed. And so it was put in the fire or their incinerator, whatever it might have been, and the report was destroyed. Now, why was it destroyed is a great question. Now, it wouldn't have been the only copy of the report. There would have been a copy that would have been provided to the Department of Supply and potentially other agencies. So what's happened to that report? Either it's sitting in some dusty filing cabinet somewhere that no one has come across, and that's why the National Archives are unable to locate anything in their records, or it has been purposely, intentionally, or maybe inadvertently withheld for release. Either the Defense doesn't know what it has in its own files, or it was something that's so sensitive that 60 years on, releasing that report could be a potential risk to national security for whatever reason, whether it be an embarrassment to Australia, if it was a foreign government like the US that had some advanced technology it was testing and something went wrong, it came down. There was potential risk to people, property, and safety of flight. That could have been a huge reputational risk and embarrassment for the Australian government and the US government. That's just speculation. Or it was something completely different, and we can only speculate as to why the Department of Supply's report hasn't been released. And so that was one of the drivers behind a government petition that I launched last year. And we were fortunate to receive 831 signatures for the petition, which really called for the government, the Australian government, to launch an independent inquiry and investigate the Westall case and provide some answers and be transparent with the Australian public and provide answers to the witnesses that have lived with this event for 60 years. And if that Department of Supply report is available, well, it should be released. It should be made available to the public. But unfortunately, we have not yet seen. That report has
No,
not
no.
yet seen the light of day. So that's what researchers like myself and Shane and others, that's the holy grail really of the Westall case, and that's what we continue to search for.
See, there must be something, because I remember one of the stories they were talking about, one of the students had a camera and was taking pictures, and that got
One of the
confiscated.
teachers.
Was it the
Yeah,
teachers?
it was
Sorry.
actually one of the teachers. Yeah. So
See, this is why we need you here, Grant. I'll be telling the story wrong.
Well, it's and you know, and this is it's actually an interesting point you raised, because for witnesses over 60 years, the minutiae, these sort of details can change, but the core story is still there. So yes, it was reported that one of the teachers, her name was Barbara Robbins, she was another science teacher, that witnesses reported that she had a camera. She was able to take a camera out onto the school grounds, the sports oval, and started snapping away and taking photographs. And that camera and film was then confiscated by either the military or government representatives that were alleged to be on site after the incident that day. So that's why I say, why was there confiscation of evidence? Why was whatever was captured on that camera, why was that so sensitive and so secret that it can't see the light of day?
That would have been the smoking gun evidence if she would have said nothing and kept it. Yeah, absolutely.
So that photographic evidence and the Department of Supplies report would certainly have been the smoking gun. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because according to the teacher, she was right there. It was right there. So she would have had a Billy Myers sort of picture.
Yeah, that's
clear,
right. So
crystal clear.
You would have had, I mean, how many shots she got off, who knows? But that's why I say it wasn't just children that observed this. It was Andrew Greenwood, who didn't go public and have his face on camera for many, many decades. He spoke with, so he was, just to kind of recap for your audience, Andrew Greenwood was about 20 years of age on the day of the incident. He was a science teacher. A school student, a girl, burst into his classroom and after running in from the sports oval and said, Mr. Greenwood, there's a flying saucer. And then 5 minutes later, the school recess bell rang and there's a mass exodus, and the school children just burst onto the sports oval to see what's going on. And a few minutes shortly thereafter, Andrew Greenwood, the teacher, comes out onto the sports oval to see what the ruckus is, and he observes a strange object in the sky above the school. He didn't comment that it was flying saucer in shape, because it was maybe tilted at a different angle or looked slightly different in terms of its morphology. But he went on the record with James McDonald in 1967. So within a year after shortly a year after the Westall case, he sat down with James McDonald. You can actually listen to his audio commentary still. It's available on YouTube. And then Andrew Greenwood went dark for many decades, and it wasn't until James Fox released The Phenomenon in 2020 that Andrew Greenwood, thanks to the work of Shane Ryan, another Australian researcher, James Rigney, and obviously James Fox, they were able to track down Andrew Greenwood, but he was very, very reluctant to go on camera. And James Fox was able to eventually convince him to go on camera, but he didn't want his face to be shown. So in The Phenomenon, Andrew Greenwood goes public, but his face is not shown. And then it's not until years later, when did Phenomenon came out in 2020, and then a few years later, Andrew Greenwood sat down with Ross Coulthart publicly on camera, his face on camera, and he finally went public with his testimony. And sadly, Andrew Greenwood passed away last year. Now, what's interesting about Andrew Greenwood is in the days after the Westall incident, he had an unwelcomed, unsolicited knock on his door in the evening, and there were two gentlemen standing at his door, one in military attire, one in civilian attire, and they essentially threatened him. They said, if you talk about what you saw, it will be very easy for people, the Department of Education, to think that you were drinking on the job and your employment could be at risk. So they threatened him. And that's what I got the sense that's really what pissed him off in the years thereafter. That was obviously one of the reasons why maybe he didn't talk about it for as long as he did, but that always sat with him and made him quite angry that he was told to shut up about it. So he was one of up to 3 teachers that saw something that day. Andrew Greenwood was the first. Barbara Robbins was the second, another science teacher that took photographs reportedly. And then there was another teacher, I believe, a PE teacher, one of the physical education teachers that was on the sports oval and observed it when it actually occurred. I don't believe she ever went public with her testimony, though. So students, 3 teachers. There are people off-site, not on the school grounds, that also saw something. Paul Smith is an incredibly compelling witness, and he was 16 years of age on the day. Market Gardner. And when he recounted what he saw to me on camera, fascinating what he recalls and what he saw. And there were other teachers, other members of the general public that saw something as well, some activity above the school and down by the Grange. So even golfers.
At the same time.
Yeah, so the incident occurred. It's been ambiguous how long the incident occurred, how it went for. Some say it was, what they saw lasted 5 minutes. Some it was upwards of 20 minutes. So it's because there was also reports of activity of light aircraft, up to 5 light aircraft, Cessna-like aircraft, that kind of came out of nowhere and started following or trying to pursue these objects in a game of, Andrew Greenwood's words, a game of cat and mouse. So there was, there was these up to 3 objects observed in the sky, moving in ways that no one was able to readily explain or reconcile. Then you had a response by, Cessna aircraft trying to pursue whatever it was in the sky, and they were unsuccessful according to the reports of the witnesses. And then later that day, you have a rapid military response on site, jeeps and trucks with the Grange area, the wooded area south of the school, where it was reported that one of these objects either landed or came into close contact with the ground. That area was cordoned off. There were reports of members of the military with what people suspect were Geiger counters or metal detectors, searching for something or trying to retrieve something, taking soil samples off-site. And then the whole area, the grass area that showed this kind of perfect circle of where the grass had been flattened by potentially one of these objects, that area was burned in the days after to maybe get rid of any record of any evidence. So you have all of these things occur, and it's just, the fact that there is this unanswered questions about, well, why was there a rapid military response? Why was evidence confiscated? Why were witnesses intimidated and told to stay quiet and shut up about it? That all lends credence to there being a cover-up as well.
I just had a thought. That famous photograph that was taken? I've actually got a magazine here from 1975, and that's the object, isn't it? That was taken by the chap, I can't remember.
Bicycle bell.
Yeah, someone described as a bicycle bell. That was taken a couple of days beforehand, the original incident?
Yeah, so the Westall incident... Sorry, I'll let you finish. Go
on. Do you think the military were aware of this object and that they were sort of tracking the skies, knowing that there were potentially flying objects around the area at that sort of point? So that's why the rapid response afterwards, like so quickly after like 10 minutes after the event. Do you think that's a coincidence?
It's a good question, and I've always kept the Westall incident of the 6th of April 1966 and that photograph you just shown. That was photographic. That was a photograph that was taken 4 days earlier, on the 2nd of April of 1966, by a gentleman by the name of James Kibble in a suburb called Balwyn, which was about 10 to 15 kilometers away from Westall. So the only definitive connection that we can make of that incident, the Balwyn UFO, the photo that you just shown, and the Westall case, is the fact that it was approximately 15 kilometers away. It was 4 days prior to the Westall incident, And the fact that it kind of is looking like it's tilted on its side is consistent with some of the testimony that some of the Westall witnesses said, that when the object moved rapidly away, it kind of tilted on its side and off it went. Beyond that, there isn't really any solid connection that we can make that Baldwin UFO was directly linked or connected with the Westall case. So, and there has, that Baldwin UFO photo has been hotly debated. There have been some folks, some skeptics have commented that, well, maybe it was just a hubcap or a bicycle bell that was thrown up into the air and a snapshot was taken, or there is, the photograph has been manipulated. I don't know. I haven't really ever done a deep dive on the Baldwin UFO case, but what is interesting is that James Kibble, who took that photograph, he was an engineer. He was in his backyard, his garden, had his camera taking some photographs of his plants or vegetable patch for, I think, a family member. And then he looked up and saw this object, and he was so shocked that when he raised the camera to Polaroid camera to take a photograph, he smashed the camera into his face and had a bit of a mark on his nose. And he took this photograph, which is it's an incredible photograph. It's a stunning photograph. And then, in the weeks later, he was actually visited by the Royal Australian Air Force, and they were basically, quizzing him, pressing him on what it was he saw, and they were actually showing him other photographs of UFOs. For what reason, I'm not unsure. I don't know enough about, James Kibble's case, but it is an interesting case. But I have always deliberately kept it separate to the Westall incident. I know James Fox in The Phenomenon, he has kind of coupled the Westall case and the Baldwin UFO together. He is very interested by the Baldwin UFO case. But to your point, I do suspect that, whatever it was that was observed in the sky above Westall High School and close to the ground, perhaps at the Grange area, had to have certainly been tracked on radar, or there was, advanced knowledge of what it was, because how could they get there in such a short period of time after the incident? Within some report, upwards of 20 minutes after what the students had seen. So it certainly must have been tracked, which begs the question, why was it being tracked? What was it they were tracking? How did they know that it was, in the skies of, in Australian airspace? But radar data has also never seen the light of day. So Essendon Airport, and so Melbourne's airport, Tullamarine Airport, was in the process of being rolled out, constructed, and finalised. So Essendon Airport, which is actually very close to where I live, that was our main airport in Melbourne at the time, for international travellers and so on. So that would have been the location where radar was being operated, and if it was being tracked, that's where it would have been picked up. Now, there's never been any radar data that's been released. There's also an airport only kilometres away from Westall High School called Moorabbin Airport, where it was. It's been postulated, it's been suggested that, well, maybe these light aircraft, these 5 Cessna-like aircraft, took off from Moorabbin, and that's why they were so close. They were there so quickly at the time of the incident. Was that a rapid deployment of aircraft from Moorabbin, or was it military aircraft that was deployed from a neighbouring Royal Australian Air Force base? These are all questions that we still don't have answers for. But to your point, Nick, the Baldwin UFO is certainly an interesting case, hotly debated case, but I've always deliberately kept it separate from my research into the Westall case.
That's fair. Because one of the documentaries I was watching, that the fact there was a collaboration between the Americans and Australian sort of research department to sort of either, God knows what actually building, but there was some sort of collaboration. And one conclusion that the fact that a weather balloon was one thing, but maybe some sort of experimental aircraft that the Americans were developing, and they might have like a secret base that the Australians didn't really know about. I mean, did you find any information in regard to that, like the two working together?
So yeah, and Shane Ryan has done a lot of work on this. So Australia was very, very prominent in aircraft R&D, research and development in the 50s and 60s, and so Australia was very much at the forefront of aircraft design and research and development. So there would certainly have been, extensive collaboration between Australia and the United States in aircraft R&D. There was also a joint Australian-US project that was taking place about 500 kilometers northwest of Westall, a place called Mildura. There was a project called Project Highball, where high altitude balloons, these massive balloons that were filled with helium, went up into the high atmosphere, into the stratosphere, 100,000 feet in the air, basically, with a payload and with sensor equipment on it, and they were designed to detect radioactive remnants, basically, in the atmosphere to get a sense as to, well, what atomic or nuclear testing was being carried out in the Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific region, perhaps. And so it was a hypothesis was put forward by a wonderful Australian researcher, Keith Basterfield, many years ago, that, well, maybe it was one of these Highball balloon launchings that didn't go according to plan and drifted completely off course, and that's what was observed above the sky in Westall, above the skies in Westall High School. Now, unfortunately, and I know Keith. He's a wonderful researcher. He's certainly one of the leading Australian UFO researchers over the decades, along with Bill Chalker. Both of them have investigated the Westall case extensively, and so I respect Keith for putting that hypothesis forward. He's only ever positioned it as a hypothesis. He was not there on the day of Westall, so he's openly said he doesn't know what it was. This is just a working hypothesis. And while Keith was able to verify through documentation, through records from the United States, that there was a high altitude launching from Mildura on the 5th of April, 1966, so the day prior to the Westall case. But unfortunately, there's never been any documentary evidence located that tells us, well, what was the fate of that Highball balloon? It was flight 292. Where did it come down? Did it crash? Was it a successful normal recovery? Now, all accounts point to it being an ordinary, normal flight that was successful, because you can actually look in documentation and see the results, the data that was collected from flight 292. So that would indicate that it was maybe a nominal or normal flight, didn't have any issue. It wasn't recovered. All of the balloons, not all the balloons, but all the payloads were recovered, with the exception of one or two that were lost at sea. But there's never been any documentary evidence that's seen the light of day that suggests that it was this flight, Highball flight 292, that was off course and landed at Westall. That's what researchers have I've been trying to track down documentary evidence that definitively gives us, can put to bed the Highball case, whether it supports Keith's hypothesis or it doesn't support it. If documentary evidence comes to light that definitively shows that it wasn't a Highball balloon, it wasn't flight 292, well, then we can remove that hypothesis from the table, because it's often one of the first plausible explanations that the media will turn to when they cover the Westall case. They'll jump to the conclusion that it was a high altitude balloon. So if we can find some documentary evidence that validates or invalidates that plausible prosaic explanation, then that's a successful endeavor. So, but that search continues, and researchers are, like myself, we're constantly frustrated that our efforts don't produce a whole lot of breadcrumbs. But the search continues.
It does. Believe. Just not with the mainstream, but you are the Australian go-to guy when they want to talk about this case. But what I wanted to ask you something now,
sure,
because this is what fascinates me as well about this story: the sheer number of objects that we're seeing. Now, can you nail because the numbers differ. Between 1 to 3 objects we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason why they differ?
It's a good question, and it's always been ambiguous as to actually how many objects there were. And Sue Jones, one of the primary witnesses who I interviewed in my documentary, she only saw one object on the day of the incident. She was in the sports oval, and I asked her, how many objects did you see? And she said she just saw one, because, and I can appreciate what she was saying, because when you see something in the sky, you tend to look specifically at that object, and maybe your peripheral vision is really not, as on point as it normally would be. You're not looking for other things outside of what is you're focusing on. So, Sue was quite candid and said, look, I only saw one thing, but there potentially could have been other objects in the sky in my peripheral. I just didn't see them. Where other students like Andrew Greenwood, he only saw one object, where you have Joy Clark on the day, her name was Joy Tighe. She saw up to 3 objects. She recalls clear as day that she saw 3 objects. Now, if there were 3 objects in the sky, if it's true that there are 3 objects, well, that straight away, I think, buries the highball hypothesis that it was a balloon. But it has always been fascinating that there was such a contrasting report of between 1 and 3 objects. Shane talks about this. He's talked about this a number of times, but that the single object that a lot of people recounted seeing was maybe one of the objects that was closest to them, and the 2 other objects may have been further away or higher up in the sky, so they may have been a little more difficult to observe. It's really challenging to try, and this is one of the challenges that researchers face. Is there's again nothing other than witness testimony that you can go off to kind of get a sense as to what the detail is. Was it just one object? Was it just 3? So that's why researchers will often say, there was between 1 and 3 or up to 3 objects observed in the sky in the day, and it's tricky to pinpoint down exactly how many there were. But that's what's always been reported. Some saw 1 object, some saw 3, some didn't see anything. And
I believe that child who jumped over the fence, the boy, he said he saw 3 as well.
Yeah, I believe his name was Victor. Yes, he I think he's passed away now, but he recalled seeing up to 3 objects. And some students only saw the light aircraft, the Cessna planes. Some students didn't see anything in the sky, maybe because they were late to the party, and by the time they got on the sports oval, what was in the sky had departed. But there were a lot of students that also saw this circular formation in the Grange area, because the Grange was very well known to the students. It was about 1 kilometre south of the school, and they had to cross Market Gardens to get there. It was basically an area that was well known to the students, because they would actually have their cross-country runs down that way about once a month. So it was kind of like the rebels would go down there for a smoko, for a cigarette, when they were not in class or before or after school, whatever, what have you. So that area was known to the students quite well. And it's also ambiguous as to actually how many alleged landing sites there were. There was one site that is commonly referred to and referenced by witnesses in the Grange area, and you can actually walk to this area and see walk over the ground where it was reported one of these objects came down. But then you have other witnesses that commented that, well, no, there was another landing site here or over there. So it's also ambiguous as to how many reported landing sites there are. Now, are they in fact landing sites, or were they just flattened grass by the livestock, the cows? I know that was put forward by one of the skeptics, but is it really that plausible to think that you would have a perfectly symmetrical, circle of flattened grass in between all other tall grass, and that was made just by livestock. I'm not too sure. So yeah, coming back to your main point, yes, it's always been hard to definitively say, well, how many objects there were and how many landing sites there were. That remains a bit of a mystery to this day as well.
Because Tanya was it Tanya who actually saw the landing site? She was taken away in the ambulance and was never seen again. Did I get her name right?
Yeah, so her name was Tanya Vassie, and it's always been, unfortunately, one of the things with the Westall case, it's kind of like a game of Chinese whispers, not just in testimony, but also visually what people saw. If when the witnesses were asked to draw what it is they saw, there are slight variations between what everyone saw, because everyone internalizes and interprets what they saw differently, and how they put it on the page is going to look different. That's also true of the facts of the day. The Chinese whispers kind of get convoluted as the story is told from one student to another student. So Tanya Vassie, who has gone public, she was one of 3 students that were reported to have come close into close proximity with one of these objects, either hovering or landed on the ground. And it was reported that one of the students was taken away in an ambulance, and she was never seen again. Now that story gets a little bit convoluted in the sense that she was never seen again because was she moving to a different school? One of the students, Terry Peck, who knew where Tanya lived, knocked on her door in the day or days after the incident, and the residents of this household had never heard of the Vassie family. Well, did Terry get that house right? Was she at the right house? These are little details that often don't get talked about. But it was reported that there was an ambulance on site in the afternoon that did take a student away. Was that Tanya, or was that one of the other students that had was there another student that had passed out, had fainted? Was that Tanya, because she was prone to having she had fainted on another occasion? So was that something that she was prone to, that was connected to what it was she saw? We really don't know. But Tanya, her story is an interesting one because the details around it are a bit convoluted, and they do change. They have changed a fair bit over time. So it's very hard to definitively say, was it Tanya that was taken away in an ambulance? She doesn't recall being taken away in an ambulance. She doesn't recall fainting. So her recollection is different to what others have commented on.
Does she recall this other student that went and knocked on her door? Does she know who he is?
No. So so Terry, one of the witnesses, had commented that she had knocked on the door of where she thought Tanya Vassie had lived, and the residents of this household had no idea who Terry was referring to. So I think Tanya she doesn't even quite recall where she lived at the time. Apparently the family was from, I don't know if it was Yugoslavia or another country, maybe didn't, I don't know if English was the first language in that household. I'm not too sure. Did they move fairly frequently? Was that a temporary residence for them? These are all kind of things that have come up in discussion over the years. But yeah, it's hard to kind of definitively say, was it Tanya that was taken away in an ambulance? Was there in fact someone that was taken away in an ambulance? If it was it Tanya or is it another student? It's really hard to tell.
Okay.
But Tanya certainly was, one of the key primary witnesses. She recounts that she definitely saw something at close proximity. Along with Terry was one of the other. Now, I believe Tanya. So Terry Peck is the one that has commented that she actually saw the craft, saw a craft or an object hovering or in contact with the ground at the Grange. Tanya, I'm not too sure. I'd have to look over her testimony. Perhaps she only saw the flattened grass and maybe didn't see the object, but was in proximity of where Terry had recalled seeing the object. I'm not too sure. But there were certainly 3 students that were the first ones to be on the scene at the Grange and be at this area where there was flattened grass, and for Terry specifically, where she reported seeing an object in close proximity to the ground. So they're the only 3 students that saw an object on or near the ground. All of the other students either saw between 1 and 3 objects in the sky, or the light aircraft, or just saw the flattened grass. So you've got a real mix of what students saw during the incident and following the incident.
Interesting. I was going to say, in terms of the FOIA request that you have been doing, do you think within time, give it a couple of decades, and know these things take a long process? I mean, do you think some sort of information will come out within the next 10 or possibly 20 years? And do you see yourself stopping, looking into this case, or are you going to continue searching for the truth?
Well, I hope so. I hope that there is. I mean, I'm of the firm belief that there has to be an audit trail, a paper trail for what that can kind of lead us to a determination as to what exactly happened on the day. If there was, this rapid military response, it's not just the military. There was also police. There was also fire, the fire department. There was also, reports of government officials being on site. Now, there has to be a paper trail for all of that. So that's certainly records that I'm trying to track down through the Victorian Police, through the Australian Department of Defence, even the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, ASIO. It was, there have been claims that there are ASIO officials, our kind of secret equivalent of, what would it be? National Security Agency in the US. I'm not too sure, but the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, I'm pursuing records through them. I'm also pursuing records on the plausible prosaic explanation of it being highbow, to either once and for all say that, well, it wasn't a high altitude balloon, and we have documentation that now tells us that, or it has been rumored that, well, maybe it was a US high altitude balloon from another project that was monikered or named Ashcan, and that was maybe not one of the Australian launched high altitude balloons, but one of the a US launched high altitude balloon. And if there was something so secretive and sensitive in terms of payload on one of these Ashcan high altitude balloons, well, maybe the US government had given the Australian government a heads up, and there was a joint response, and that's why they were so quick to respond on the day. They're all sort of records that I'm breadcrumbs or leads that I'm following up on and trying to secure the release of documentation, which will give us a little bit more information, which could then lead to another breadcrumb. I've searched high and low through not just NASA, CIA, the Office of Naval Research, the US State Department, the Australian Department of Defence, ASIO, the Royal Australian Air Force. I've got pending requests with the Victorian Police, number of other, the US Air Force, the Department of Energy. So just trying to cover as many bases. Whenever I hear of a lead or a new bit of information that comes to light, if there's an opportunity to submit a FOIA request and really exercise my right to information and try and secure any documentary evidence that can give us a clue or lead to another clue, then I'll certainly track it down. But I am hopeful that if it was something truly prosaic, and I can't rule, I can't discount that. I'm as a researcher, I have to stay neutral and follow the facts where they lead. I'm open to it being a top secret aircraft technology that was being tested. So it was a prosaic explanation, but I'm also open to it being not a prosaic explanation, being something truly extraordinary and anomalous that conforms with what it was that a lot of these students recall seeing that was something that was flying saucer in shape. And now I'm not aware of any top secret aircraft in our in our possession or being used by the Australian and the US that's flying saucer in shape. I mean, it's certainly been there have been some extraordinary claims that have been made over the decades by folks that have come forward and claimed to be whistleblowers, e.g. Bob Lazar. But I have
who's
to
in
be
the
open
chat.
to and his documentary has just come out, and it is interesting that Bob, and think of Bob Lazar what you will, but there is an interesting kind of connection that a lot of the witnesses, or some of the witnesses, recall seeing the object at Westall kind of tilt on its side and go off, and that's consistent with what Bob has said over the decades. So whether there's anything there to that, who knows? But I'll certainly continue to pursue FOIA requests and records that may not have yet seen the light of day in the National Archives of Australia. So if it was something that was truly prosaic, I do think there will be an audit trail that will hopefully come to light in the coming decade. If it was something that was truly extraordinary and it was a flying saucer, something that is not man-made, then that may be significantly harder to secure records on. If it is indeed true that there has been this highly sensitive, highly secretive, highly compartmentalized, clandestine crash retrieval and reverse engineering program of non-human technology, well, I doubt you would ever see any records released regarding that, because it is so sensitive and so so closely, such a closely guarded and hidden secret as it pertains to national security. That's just my opinion, but I would love to be proven wrong and for documents to see the light of day, namely the Department of Supplies report. That would be a key one, as well as the photographic evidence that Barbara Robbins, the teacher, took on the day, if that evidence still exists. And that's the big question.
Yeah. It seems to me that if this was a weather balloon, they would have had information come out already to say, right, this is definitely a weather balloon that you saw on that day. But it just seems to be a very old school trick of the book, isn't it? Oh, it's a weather balloon, just forget about it. It's like, that doesn't add up to the amount of witness testimonies that saying this craft literally tilted and shot off at incredible speeds. It doesn't even resemble a weather balloon. I mean, this is what the debunkers say, and I find it, obviously they haven't done any research because they're in that sort of echo chamber. It's like, oh, it's a weather balloon, forget about it. It's like very Project Blue Book style. But it's incredible the amount of witnesses has come forward and is saying the same thing and describing this craft. Is definitely up there as one of the best UFO sightings
I
in
would
the 60s.
completely agree. Absolutely. And it's such a fascinating cold case. And to your point, so one of the explanations that was offered in the days after the event, that it was a weather balloon, that it was a meteorological balloon launched by the Bureau of Meteorology from a suburb called Laverton, which is west of Westall. And that was reported to be what they had seen. Now, I think we can safely say that's not what it was. And there has been some good data that has come to light over the years that suggests, well, if you look at the weather forecast, the synoptic charts, the weather conditions of the day, that a weather balloon that was launched from Laverton would have completely missed Westall altogether. It would have been north of Westall, and it would have traveled from a west to east fashion. So, that hypothesis has been pretty much shut down. High Bal is a little bit harder because we do have this uncertainty around this flight 292 that was launched the day prior to the Westall incident. But to your point, if you take the witness testimony at face value, you cannot reconcile the flight characteristics of a deflating balloon with the flight characteristics of what it was these witnesses saw, with between 1 and 3 objects moving at such a rapid pace all over the school property in the sky. That does not comport with the what you would expect a deflating balloon to be doing. But again, that doesn't really matter to a lot of debunkers. They will just stick with the high altitude balloon hypothesis because maybe they're plagued with confirmation bias. Again, I can't rule it out because I haven't seen any documentary evidence to date that definitively rules it out. So whilst I lean less likely to it being a high altitude balloon, but again, I can't completely take it off the table until documentary evidence is presented that can take it off the table.
Which is fair. I don't know how long you got left over, Grant, because I know you've got a busy schedule ahead of you. So have you got a bit of time left over?
I've got some more time. Yeah, I can hang for another 15, 20 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. Eden, have you got any questions you want to ask?
My last question was Tanya, but you got that one. So I just wanted to know what happened. If anybody ever found out what happened to Tanya.
There is so Tanya went she was recently on, I can't remember the name of the podcast, but she recently was on a podcast and for about a bit over an hour, and she talked specifically about her experience, her encounter with whatever it was that she saw at Westall, and that's online. That's publicly available to watch on YouTube. So if you just type in her name, it's VASSIETANIA as Tanya. You can probably find her interview where she talks in more detail about what it was that she experienced. But Westall, the 60th anniversary was earlier this month, and there has been a lot of press coverage throughout the course of this month, and only on the 6th of April of this year to commemorate the 60th anniversary, one of Australia's flagship news and human interest programs called Australian Story on the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the equivalent of the BBC in the UK. It did a 30-minute story on the Westall case, and a lot of these witnesses were on camera for this Australian Story program, including Tanya. So you can watch that on, if you just type into YouTube Australian Story Westall, it'll come up. You can watch it. It's actually one of the most viewed episodes that Australian Story has done, which is one remarkable in itself. But it's great that there has been a lot of interest in the Westall case and people have watched that episode. But Tanya is interviewed in that episode, and you can watch it on YouTube if you're interested to see her testimony.
Well, I did want to say also you can watch it on the other live. I did a live show, and that's what brought me to you. But I also did. I played that because the 60th anniversary. I didn't know much about the case, and so I showed the viewers and myself, because it was more like a watch party, and I was like blown away by it. And that's where I saw where the head teacher came out when he was talking to James Fox and said, they basically would have ran me out of town and said I was a drunkard. That's my words, but
no, that's a good way of paraphrasing what Andrew Greenwood basically said. And he didn't stay at Westall for very long. In 1967, he moved to another school, a school called Haileybury in Victoria to teach. So he wasn't there at Westall for a long period. Was that because of the discomfort and the pressure that he had for what he saw at Westall? Who knows? But it was wonderful that Ross Coulthart was able to get him to come forward and go public, in the years prior to his death, unfortunately. So, but Westall, it is one of the most intriguing mass UFO sightings, and I would say around the globe. It's certainly my top 5 cases, but it's always interesting when I talk with people, not just in Australia, but also from overseas, that they don't know about the Westall case. It's for many, many years, it's kind of been a diamond in the rough for a lot of people. They just don't know about it. And when they do look into it, there are so many fascinating and mysterious aspects to it. And it's certainly up there there are a lot of contrasts and comparable elements to that of the aerial school sighting in Zimbabwe. Had in 1994, I think it was, with the students that saw reports seeing a craft land. but yeah, it absolutely is. The fact that you've got so many witnesses, several hundred students, teachers, members of the public that weren't even on the school grounds, they all saw something that they were not able to explain, that they, many of them report to move in ways which they weren't able to reconcile. So it was truly anomalous in how it moved and how they characterized it. It's just such a fascinating case. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to research it and try and search for records is, one, such a fascinating case. Two, it's in my own backyard. And three, there's just been no evidence that points us to answers. So it's truly an unsolved cold case, and that makes it still very interesting to pursue.
We have a question from one of our viewers. Has any former Australian police, army, or Australian Air Force officer come forward with information?
Great question. So as a result
That's
of
from
the
Monkey.
airing,
Sorry.
Yeah, so as a result, thanks for your question. As a result of the airing of the Australian Story episode on the Westall case, and it was aired only earlier this month, Shane Ryan, so principal investigator, he spoke about this only earlier this month at one of the events that was being held to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Westall case. He stated that a gentleman had reached out to him following the airing of Australian Stories episode and said that his father was with the Victorian police, so the Springvale police station, which was the police station that had cars or a car dispatched on the day of the incident to the Westall High School, and that the son had told Shane that his father was aware of police reports, or what they called running sheets back in the day. It was basically a comprehensive contemporaneous notes of who they spoke with, what they saw on scene, so that if ever there was a need for there to be court proceedings or civil trial or criminal investigation, and they were to testify in court, they would have some comprehensive notes that they could refer to. And these running sheets were very important specifically for that purpose, if there were court proceedings. And so the son of this police officer stated that his father had told him that the running sheets for the week of so the 6th of April, I think was, I don't know what day of the week that was, but for that week or the fortnight around the Westall case, that the running sheets were taken off site. They were higher ups, either in the military or another agency, took those running sheets, took those records. They were very, very important documents. They were kept in a safe at the Springvale police station. But those running sheets for that period in which Westall happened were taken off site, and they were not in the running sheets that were kept on site at the police station. Now that's interesting. Why were those records taken off site? So I've got a FOIA request. Yeah, there you go. There's another element
I can smell it. I'm in England, man. I can smell it. It's a cover up.
So that's new information. That's come to light only this month, and so I've got a pending FOIA request with the Victorian Police to see what running sheets are still publicly available and see exactly what date range of running sheets are missing. So why were they missing? Why were they taken off site? Why are they not? Why were they not kept as a record of the day's events? So it just begs it. It raises more questions than it does answers, sadly.
Do you think that they're hiding this information to prevent panic, or do you think they're covering? What would you feel? Because
put it this way: if it was non-human,
that's from Tony.
Yeah, so if it was non-human technology, and what we have heard time and time again is that there is a fear that there is going to be such an ontological shock if it is disclosed that there is non-human intelligence that's been visiting planet Earth for who knows how long, and there has been visitation from NHI. Is it a plausible scenario that it's been withheld from the general public to mitigate ontological shock, to avoid mass panic? Well, that's what we've heard time and time again from disclosure advocates that have, and Hal Puthoff has said, one of the key figures in ufology over the decades. He has stated that he was involved in a think tank in the George Bush II administration. There was a think tank put together that would basically evaluate the risks of disclosure versus non-disclosure. And after deliberations, they came to the conclusion that it is not in the public interest for disclosure to happen should there be an opportunity for a disclosure to be made, because of all of the risks to institutions, energy, the financial markets, all of these issues, these ripple effects that would occur if there was a disclosure of there being NHI visitation to planet Earth. Now, I can only speculate and say, well, would there be an ontological shock? I don't think, for me, because I'm well invested into this topic, and I'm not religious. I'm an atheist, so I don't I don't have maybe the same response. I maybe won't have the same response that others with a strong faith or different belief systems may have. So I think it probably wouldn't impact me the way that maybe it would impact others. And I think the younger generation, the younger generation,
I believe
today,
I have faith. I have faith in it, and it wouldn't.
Yeah, so it'd be different strokes for different folks. Obviously, some it wouldn't change their worldview. Others, it may certainly change the way that they view the world and their place.
Well, the Pope, the old Pope, I don't know about the new Pope, but the old Pope said, if they came down, I'll baptize them. So
yeah.
It's not. It's just it's a weird excuse that they give that it will cause mass panic. It won't.
Yeah. Yep.
What causes?
I agree, and that's why I say I don't really invest a lot of stock into the mass panic argument being one of the reasons against disclosure. But who knows? And that's what we've heard time and time again. I mean, I would love there to be, if it is true that there has been visitation by NHI, I would love there to be a formal disclosure of that, or a disclosure event that can put it to bed once and for all.
Or a disclosure of something.
We know then our place in the universe, that we're not alone. That will answer one of the big three questions of our time: are we alone in the universe? A lot of us believe we are not alone, because it's more probable than not that there is other intelligent life in the universe, but we just haven't seen any conclusive evidence of visitation to this planet to date. Now, some will say there is definitive evidence, but for me, I'm still waiting for that.
Do you think we're going to get any sort of documentation or proof of NHI that's going to be released in the Trump administration? Because I know there's a big hoopla in ufology at the moment that something big is coming. And I personally think it's just going to be just like the MOD files in the UK. They've released all the UFO files and it hasn't really proven anything. Yes, the phenomena is real, but it's not proven that extraterrestrials are visiting this planet. So what's your theories on that?
Yeah, I'm managing my expectations. I don't think we're going to see a smoking gun in records that we released by the Trump administration. Certainly, I applaud the Trump administration's commitment to transparency. I think, disclosure of documentation and evidence is to be welcomed. I think that what we will see, though, are records that have not previously been disclosed because either they were classified many, many decades ago and they haven't been reviewed, or there have been documents that were once thought to be lost or destroyed that are located or were originally refused for release by a FOIA request, but now they're in a position decades later where they can be declassified because they don't pose a risk to national security or sources and methods. So I don't think we're going to see, I'd love to be wrong, but I don't think we're going to see any smoking gun in any records that will be released by or pushed for release by the Trump administration. Certainly we might see some interesting breadcrumbs in there, but I don't think disclosure will come through documentary evidence. I think if there is any disclosure, it would be either a disclosure event or there would be some smoking gun evidence that is, either leaked or is it comes to light from a whistleblower through, that's an unofficial release, like an Edward Snowden type kind of
catastrophic
release.
disclosure, sort of.
Yeah. So, but again, I'd love to be proven wrong on that. I'd love to have there be a formal disclosure from a sitting president, if in fact there has been visitation of NHI and the claims are true that there has been a crash retrieval program and a reverse engineering program. Because at the moment, it's really frustrating because you've got two competing narratives coming out of the US. You have the US, the Pentagon's UFO UAP investigatory body, ARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, reiterate its line time and time again that it has found no evidence to date that UAP are extraterrestrial in origin. Now, that's a stark contrast to what we're hearing from these highly intelligent, credible whistleblowers and folks, former intelligence officials that are saying that there has been this 80-year cover-up of a clandestine crash retrieval reverse engineering program. So what is true, what is not true? That's what we're wanting to see evidence of, because unfortunately, all we're hearing is that, well, the evidence is classified. You're not able to hear it. Only those with a security clearance and a need to know can actually be privy to that information. And that's part of the frustration.
I think Anna Polina Luna, I think she wants to bring out the information, but does she have the security clearance to actually bring out these classified documents? And it's a bit like you, Grant. I'm finding very skeptical of what's going to be released and what's going to actually be shown. I think there's going to be a lot of redacted documents in terms of what they want to really present to the public. Again, are we dealing with this panic situation again? I think a lot of people in ufology got their hopes up for the time being, but I think we need to take a step back and have a realistic conclusion, just to say, look, I don't really think anything concrete is going to come out of this to prove NHI visiting this planet.
I think something might come out. I think something might come out because if the guy can start a war just to cover up a certain files, he'll do something else to stay away from them files. So I think he might. As
a misdirection or distraction.
I always thought that, but I don't want to I shouldn't, Grant, sorry, I'm not going to get into them files. So we'll just walk on by.
We'll wait and see. But I'm with you, Nick. I'm managing my expectations. But again, I'd love to be wrong. I will openly eat crow if I am wrong when I publicly state my opinion. But yeah, I think if history is to repeat itself, I think we need to just manage our expectations, because we've kind of been given a teaser of things to come time and time again. Like everyone thought that ARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, would be that's going to be the thing that gets us disclosure. But it turns out that a lot of folks are really not happy with the work that ARO has done and its former leadership. So I think we just need to manage our expectations, because if you don't, you're going to be quite disappointed.
What the one that did it for me was To the Stars Academy, because I thought how he was going to set this up, how he presented it, everything. I thought, look, if we're going to get any answers, because really and truly, I don't care what the government wants to say. If they show the files, fair enough. If they don't, well, who? Because I always say this to Nick, and it sounds conceited, but I always say I don't need the government to tell me this phenomenon is real.
Yep, that's fair.
So
there, I haven't. An experience is a gift that I'm yet to receive. So I've never had my own sighting. I've never had my own experience, and I think if I did, that would give me a completely different layer of empathy that I currently don't have. I mean, I like to. I always am touched by the number of people that do reach out to me, and they feel comfortable to share their experience, and I'll always ask them questions in good faith. But I can't truly have that depth or layer of empathy unless I've had my own experience. So that's why I say it's a gift that I'm yet to receive. But
I'll tell you, it'll happen when you don't expect it to.
When you don't expect it, well,
when you ain't expecting it, it'll happen.
Yep, right. I long for that day. It's on my bucket list. Put it that way.
I've had two experiences, and the first one I had with two other people. Now that experience, I truly believe, I think it was something military.
Yeah, right.
But what got me was the shapes, because they were. I didn't see anything. This is the weird thing, Grant. I didn't see nothing. What I saw was shadows on the ground, and these shadows were massive. There was 3 of them. They were massive shadows. I'd have to say 50 feet in diameter. They were massive. 3 of us.
Is it daytime or nighttime?
Daytime. Right. Yeah. And it's a long story, but I'm not going to give you the long story. I'm going to give you the cut down version. I even crossed the road because it was a sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. There was nothing in the sky that could have given this reflection on the ground, and it was moving as well. They were moving along very slowly, but they were moving. And I always thought to myself, I think I saw something military. I think they were working on something stealth, but it was just, they were circular.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know,
well, and that's something to keep in the back of your mind as well. Like how far ahead, if you listen to what the former head of Skunk Works said, years ago before he passed away, that, what we have is decades ahead of what the general public has seen. So whenever a new aircraft is released by DARPA or whatever is the US Air Force, that's tech that's maybe 20, 30 years old already. So what is the next generation technology that is being worked on by these private aerospace contractors and developers? Who knows? Is it technology that we can't even fathom? You have to keep that in the back of your mind.
Well, it's the only thing is they were circular in shape, and the movement of them, they were going slow. The shadows were going slow, and there was nothing. I even crossed the road to make sure that nothing was obscuring my view, that I could see that there was nothing in the sky. It's a perfect blue sky.
Yeah,
but
right.
Then I had another one. That one I don't know, because I got the feeling that it knew I seen it. That was at night. So that's how come I say, so yeah, I get, and you never expected it. Weren't looking, just never expected it. And it happened. I mean, the one that I told you about, my phone wouldn't work to film it because I wanted to film it because I said, we had enough time. It wasn't like in seconds. We had enough time. Yeah. And I wanted to film it because I said, no one's going to believe us. Went to get my phone out, wouldn't work. My friend had a better phone than me and he said, you won't believe this. His phone wouldn't work.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned phone. It makes me remember of, and I don't know if this was just because my phone battery was because I was using my phone so extensively on the day. But when I was down at the Grange in 2023, filming, interviewing a lot of these witnesses and filming them, and again, I got a couple of hours of footage. When we all walked down to, Joy Clark, one of the witnesses, she led a group of people down to one of the alleged landing sites at the Grange, and I had a full almost a full phone battery iPhone. What was it? Probably 13 back then, a couple of years ago. Full battery, went down to the Grange, and after about 10 minutes of filming, still had good battery health. My phone died completely. So complete battery drain. Now, was that because I'd been filming nonstop for a couple of hours, perhaps? Or it was something different? I don't know, but it just made me remember that happened on the day of the filming down at the Grange. So, and you know, that's anyone that is familiar with Brandon Fugal's efforts at Skinwalker Ranch, you know, the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel, you have repeated accounts of there being, you know, battery drain or technology devices not working on Skinwalker Ranch. So it is something that you hear of time and time again.
My friend's phone, though, I just want to say, my friend's phone, his battery did not drain. His phone just wouldn't work. He couldn't. You know how you have to click on to get the camera up. He couldn't. It wouldn't do it. It wouldn't do it. Because he was standing in front of me pressing it, saying it's not working.
Yeah.
It was unreal. Yeah. And that bit like kind of was like weird. Like I could write off my phone because my phone was old. So I can always say, look, it's old. Maybe had a little moment, you know, coincidence, yes. But for a second phone.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, for two separate phones to go down. That is
and his battery didn't die. Because he was there like that.
Just couldn't use it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just couldn't we couldn't film it.
Well, like I said, it's on my bucket list to have my own experience sighting. So I'll try not to expect to see anything. Maybe I have.
Someone should have a sighting. It should be you, because then you could just investigate the hell out of your own self.
Well, I wonder. You know, I've always said that, you know, marriage and the UFO topic don't always go hand in hand. So I think if I had my own sighting, I'd probably go down even more rabbit holes and get even more obsessed, as my wife likes to say that I am. But I'll try and stay grounded if I do.
Just what I should have asked you this question, Grant, before the show started. What got you into UFOs and ufology? What was the trigger point for you?
Yeah, so when I was about probably about 7 years of age, my dad took me to, there was a UFO photo exhibition. I didn't know anything about UFOs at the age of 7. I'd seen, you know, shows on TV, but I didn't have an interest in it at that age. And there was Australia's highest or tallest skyscrapers called in the 80s was called Sydney Centrepoint Tower. It's kind of like if ever you've seen the Seattle Needle, kind of like that skyscraper in Seattle. It's kind of similar to that. Yeah. And so there was a photo, and my dad was obviously aware of this photo exhibition in Sydney Centrepoint Tower, and he took me there, and it was a UFO photo exhibition, and there were a lot of these photos from the 1950s, a lot of black and white photos of famous UFO photos of the years. The McMinnville photo being the example. I've actually got it on the wall behind me there. That was the photo that was blown up on a large canvas, and it was on display in the walls of this photo exhibition, and it caught my eye, and I must have looked at it for a good 10 minutes, just staring at it, really losing myself in the photograph and imagining what it was that the rancher or the farmer would have seen on the day, how fascinating and frightening what they were seeing may have been. And that just kind of, you know, lit a fire within me in terms of my curiosity. And then growing up as a teenager in the 90s, you'd come 9:30 p.m. every Wednesday night, you'd watch the X-Files, and you'd have a big debrief with your school student friends the next day and talk about it. And so I always had an interest in the topic and I guess the culture growing up as a teenager. And then in my adult years, my early adult years, my interest kind of ebbed and flowed. But it wasn't really until, and for I imagine so many other people, the New York Times bombshell articles came out in December 2017, that really raised my eyebrows. And then throughout COVID, because so many of us had so much time on our hands at home, I started, following a couple of podcasts. I think Jimmy Church was one of the first podcasts that I actually listened to, and then I got onto other podcasts, and I kind of caught a sense as to how serious that the US was starting to take the issue of UFOs, UAP, and that Congress was starting to ask questions. And it got me wondering, what's Australia doing about this topic if our US allies taking it so seriously? And so that was the big driver for me in, I'd say, 2021, late 2021, starting to ask questions about Australia's lack of engagement, lack of involvement on this issue. And that's kind of been my driver ever since, is to really advocate for the Australian government and the Australian Department of Defence to take the issue of UAP seriously, because our US ally is taking it seriously from a potential national security threat perspective and safety of flight risk. And Australia, unfortunately, is sitting on its hands, not really even acknowledging that UAP is an issue. Move along, folks. We know what's in our airspace. We've got it all under control, which is a stark contrast to what is going on in the US. And it's always perplexed me as to why Australia and the United States are the closest of allies, yet their positions on UAP couldn't be further apart. So it was really during that period of COVID that I kind of became a sponge and tried to learn as much as I could from many as I could, and got connected with great researchers like Bill Chalker, Keith Basfield, Ross Coulthard, Jeff Cruikshank, and others, and have kind of just been on a mission ever since to trying to better understand the mindset of the Australian government as to why they're not proactively taking this topic seriously, publicly anyway.
Because my sort of interest in ufology was back in the 90s as a kid, like the X-Files. We had like programs like Strange But True. I've got a massive amount of magazines going back to the 90s,
Oh, yeah.
in fact 50s, 60s and 70s, and especially through the 90s. And it's almost like a nostalgic sort of feeling for me, sort of looking back into the past of these old cases. So, yeah, I understand that sort of spark when you're a kid. It's like, oh, God, this is like really interesting, And it's ufology was different back in the 90s. Like the pop culture surrounding like ufology was completely different to what it is now. It's more open-minded. We can actually have a discussion about it, which is quite good. But yeah, it's immensely fascinating.
Information moves in this day and age as well. I mean, I'm most active on X, and more often than not in this day and age, information is shared within the UFO community on X before it has even hit the airwaves covered by News Nation or any of the news networks. So it's really where we used to get our news was from other sources. Now it's readily available. It's information at the speed of a post, really, on X. And in the decades past, there really wasn't this access to this information in real time. You either had to go to a conference, or you had a UFO group that your organization of, or you might have had a chat room that you were in the early internet years. So information is just so much more readily available and accessible in real time in this day and age. And the fact that I can have a discussion with you guys on the other side of the planet in real time and get this information out to people that are interested, I think is definitely helped elevate the conversation, obviously increase an awareness in the general public as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as I collect all these magazines, I've got one here from UFO Times from 1991. And in fact, at the back of here, it's telling you all the conferences that's been going on, at that month. So it's telling you, obviously this is before the internet, where to go to meet up with people. And I still go to conferences, to this day, because just all meet like-minded people. So yeah, it's interesting how ufology has changed. Well, obviously the technology side is not, like I said, we can have a discussion for, you're thousands of miles away, but we can still have this discussion in this day and age. So yeah, it's immensely fascinating. Yeah,
it certainly evolves. I think it's evolved for the better. Obviously there's a lot of, social media can be a bit of a cesspool, and that's no exception for the UFO community on X, but it certainly evolved for the better in the fact that you have access to so much more information. If you can't get to a conference in person, there's now an opportunity for you to join online remotely, so you have access to so much more information than maybe you ever did in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting times, but I think people should be a bit cautious of what's coming around the corner in terms of the right information. Because you, like I said, it's with social media, ufology can be quite, especially like with X, this could be a bit of a cesspool, and now it's just like no one could be like nice to each other, everyone's sort of arguing different types of opinions, but it can be a bit, nasty at some point. So
Yeah, there's tribalism, and you've got the and it is tough too in this day and age now with the way that AI is moving so fast. It's going to be even more harder to really discern what is fact and what is fiction. So unfortunately, on X, and this is no fault of people that have an interest in this topic, but maybe don't know how to do their due diligence or don't have a level of discernment. They'll just accept what is put out as truth, when in fact it may be a fabrication, it may be AI, and unfortunately there are, I think, people on social media that are really trying to manipulate their audience and monetize off of their audience, and they will basically put out information that is inaccurate, but their audience will buy it because they don't know maybe what questions they should be asking to exercise an appropriate level of discernment or do the due diligence. So you have to be wary of that as well. That's why I think it's so hard to ever rely exclusively on a video or a photo that's put online. You have to really see supporting, corroborating data that goes along with it. So you can never rely on one bit of data exclusively.
I think more people now are interested into UFOs because it's a hot topic at the moment. But I think people that are new to the phenomena get quite excited, because I was there once when I was a kid, and you'd probably say for the same for you, Grant. The fact that oh my god, it's new for me. It's completely opened my perspective, and you sort of not really putting any rational thoughts. Now, it's not their fault, but it's just what's happening now with X. It's just so much AI stuff that's been going on, and it's sort of convoluted the whole aspect of what can I trust now in terms of, especially when it comes to footage. This is why I like to look back into the past and have a look at these footage, because it was quite harder to fake something. Yeah, sure, you get your fakes, but is more authentic, basically. I mean, on my channel, I upload all these old school UFO documentaries, and it's quite interesting to see the UFO sightings that has sort of evolved over time. But you can easily spot now an AI video. It's got that look to it. It's too clean, it's too perfect. But then one would say when a real footage does get uploaded, people would automatically say, oh, it's AI. So now it's just everything's all mumbo jumbo.
Those same people that were screaming AI, they were screaming before AI, CGI.
CGI, and that's why it's, and to your point, it's so fascinating to go, and have a look at the National Archives records from decades past. Like Bill Chalker and Keith Basterfield have done a wonderful job of curating historical cases in Australia. What a lot of people don't know is that Australia has almost as long as a history as the United States investigating UFOs. In the years following Roswell in the early 50s, Australia investigated cases of UFOs, which the vernacular that was used by the Australian Department of Defence in the decades past was UAS, unusual aerial sightings. Different to unidentified aerial phenomena, which was not a new term that was used in the 50s as well, and then eventually UFOs. But there are a lot of the National Archives in Australia, and I imagine in the US and in the UK, is really a treasure trove of some great historical cases where you can actually go back and have a look at the case files and the case reports and see just some really, really interesting data that is worth worth keeping in mind and looking at, because a lot of people, unfortunately, modern ufology started really in 2004. A lot of people think that UFOs really started at the time of the Nimitz incident, the Tic Tac incident. But there is such a long history and a wealth of information that goes back decades in the National Archives of many, many countries. And a lot of people, unfortunately, know their history or bother to look at their history of UFO cases in their respective countries.
Yeah, because I saw one today from Australia, the Gulan.
I'm not sure on the pronunciation. Which
Yeah,
state? You know.
No, it was the one where in the 1950s, 2 railroad workers, and the saucer flew right over their train.
Oh, okay. I'll have to give that a look. I don't know if I'm aware of it at face value. Gulam.
Gula, GOOL something.
All right. If you come across it, flick it to me in a message. I'll be keen. I may have had a look at it, but
you know what? Give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds, because I'm sure I put it somewhere.
I mean, in terms of England, we've released our UFO files. I mean, it depends how in depth we've gone. I mean, this is going back 2007, 8. So I remember that's where I started to really spark my interest into UFOs. I mean, it was when I was a kid, but when I was a teenager, like 17, I did hear that the MOD, the Ministry of Defense, were going to release all their UFO files. And there's all out there on the internet for people to look at, but I think a lot of people just sort of gloss over that because yes, it talks about UFO sightings, but it's not what they expect in terms of the truth, because they're talking about crash retrievals, you know, NHI or some sort of visitation, and it's just not there, and it's just case files of UFO sightings that the public, honestly military personnel and police officers have seen over the years, which is, you should take those in consideration, but it's not what people really want. I mean, it's still sort of going with
with the extraordinary claims that we've now heard for a number of years, and that, you know, have been echoed for decades of there being this, they're an 80-year cover-up now of this crash retrieval reverse engineering program. That's what people are wanting to know about. They want to see evidence of that. And you know, as if, you know, researchers, we're kind of looking, we want that as well, but we're also interested in historical cases, and and for me, that's where Westall, you know, is such a fascinating case. You don't necessarily have the smoking gun evidence that everyone wants that's available, but it's just such a fascinating case itself. And again, there are just some really fascinating accounts. If you do like looking over historical files, then you can get, there's a wealth of information that is available online.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, what's interesting about, like, with the Westall is that we're not really finding a lot of like mass sightings. I think I was saying before you came on the show, Grant, that I think the last one might have been the Phoenix Lights in 1997, because thousands of people witnessed this V-shaped craft. And in recent years, we haven't really seen anything quite like that in terms of a mass sighting.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, Phoenix Lights is another one that I was fascinated in, because I'm a big Kurt Russell fan, and I did a deep dive on his encounter with the Phoenix Lights, and I was able to track down the plane that Kurt flew, a little Beechcraft Bonanza that he flew on the night of the 13th of March 1997, and you know, a lot of people don't know that there were 2 separate incidents for the Phoenix Lights. There was one at 8:30 p.m. and then there was one at 10 p.m. So a lot of people only see those lights in the sky above the mountain range that was captured in a lot of cameras, and that's the footage you see online. But there was an earlier event that there is only, I think, one bit of video footage that's available of a kind of a V shape of lights, 5 lights in the night sky. So, but Phoenix Lights is a fascinating case because it certainly had thousands of people see something that they weren't able to identify in the night sky.
It's kind of strange we don't really see these flying saucers, a bit like the Westall sort of situation, in terms of this is like a flying saucer, a traditional 1950s, 60s flying saucers. We just don't see them these days, and my scenario, just to say that I think we just scared them off because we keep on shooting them out of the sky, so they're probably just like, do you know what, sod that, we're not going to go there, you know. But yeah, we just don't really see anything quite like that these days.
No, it's interesting that the morphology has changed significantly over the decades. I mean, if you look at the photographs that were taken in the 50s and the 60s, black and white photographs tend to show craft that are saucer shaped. Now, how many of those are fabrications? Well, that's going to be a part of it. But the morphology has certainly changed over the years. You had flying saucers back in the day, then you had cigar-shaped craft, and now we've then there was Tic Tac, and now we've moved to the orbs. So there's certainly change in now. Is that morphology change because of culture and how our culture evolves and changes over the decades, or is that a result of whatever it is, that if it is NHI, is that evolving as well over the decades that it's been seen, been observed? Who knows? But it is interesting that you don't really hear of, certainly in the public sphere, of reports of craft that resemble that classic flying saucer shape. I guess the only thing that comes to mind for me that's interesting in terms of comparing it to a flying saucer shape is the gimbal footage, the gimbal UAP. It kind of has that shape that kind of resembles saucer-like. But it's a good point that what's happened to a lot of the flying saucer observations. Where are they gone these days?
I have to beg to differ, because 2 videos in on my channel, I've got air traffic control where a pilot's called in saying that now that she didn't say saucer, and I think this is where the word's gone missing, flying saucer. Yeah. They call it now the disc, and she reported a disc-shaped object by her plane. She's a commercial airline pilot, and called it into ATC.
A good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Just the way that we frame, the terminology that we use, like, the cigar shape. Well, that may be the modern day Tic Tac that everyone is referring to, or flying saucer is now referred to a disc. So the way that we frame things, the way we say them, that has evolved over time as well.
I still call them flying saucers.
Yeah.
I call it. I use the word in classic flying saucer because I don't believe that they're using that word no more. I think they're calling them disc-shaped objects.
Yeah. Yep.
As that pilot did report in that a disc-shaped object flew by her plane.
And that's why. So Shane Ryan runs, principal investigator of the Westall case. He runs a wonderful group on Facebook, which he calls the Westall Flying Saucer Incident Group. Because that's what it was referred to. The Dandenong Journal, which was the newspaper, still going to this day, it goes by a different name, but it was the only newspaper or the lead newspaper that ran a story on the Westall case a week after it happened, and then another week after. So it did 2 articles in a span of 2 weeks, and they used the word flying saucer in their news article, and that you don't really. In this day and age, the word flying saucer kind of evolved, I guess, into UFO as a catch-all, and now there's been this transition to UAP to kind of try and alleviate some of the baggage that comes with the UFO, because if you say UFO, automatically a lot of people will run to the alien or little green men or extraterrestrial in their mind. So there's kind of been this rebranding of what people are observing over the years, for better or for worse. But you don't really hear of flying saucer being used anymore, or seeing. I don't recall seeing in the last several decades any convincing or compelling video or photographic evidence that shows the classic flying saucer that was maybe depicted in photographs in the 50s and the 60s in black and white photos. Now, that could be because I just haven't seen them, I haven't come across them, but you guys might have other thoughts on that. But it's interesting, to your point, Nick, where flying saucer is kind of a thing of decades past.
You made a good point at the fact that through the decades has been obviously the traditional flying saucers in the 1950s, and then it was like the mother ships, cigar shapes, and then we had the flying triangles, like the famous sighting
triangles as well.
That's it. But people would interpret that as secret military technology and not terrestrial or extraterrestrial technology or some sort of reverse engineering technology. So it could go back and forth in terms of what could be produced, basically. But these balls of light that we've seen a lot of has been going on for decades. Since the beginning of ufology. Yeah, Nuremberg back in the 16th century. I've done a whole video on
the
that.
Foo Fighters as well,
Exactly, Foo Fighters, yeah. I mean, some speculate that might have been German technology. But it's immensely fascinating, I have to admit. But where we are now, it's could be very hit and miss, especially what I've been observing on the social media platforms. It's a bit like, oof, it looks a bit AI to me.
Yeah. You just have to I don't really invest a lot of stock in any photo or video that I see posted on X, and to X's credit, I think now they put a little a legend saying made with AI. So I don't know if they're rolling that out. It might not be. Yeah, so that's good in that respect. But unfortunately, a lot of people I think have maybe taken it.
The people that are helping X put those little things on there, they're actually showing them, like they're showing them who made it. Here, you can look here. Here's their work.
Yeah.
So they're not just, it's not somebody sitting there saying, "Oh, this is fake," and this guy. They're giving the proper information.
Yeah, community notes I think is a good thing that X rolled out. So if there's something that someone puts up that they misidentify or they claim is real, but it's clearly not, you can have a community note, put against that post so that folks aren't thrown off. They're not misinformed or manipulated.
And unfortunately, you do get the people on social media, like for instance, like TikTok and X, that just want revenue. They just want the clicks and views, and they don't really take ufology seriously. So they use AI because it's so easy to fake a video now, and it takes seconds for them. If they got the right app, the right platform to use, they can just whack it out there. They got a few 100,000 views, they get their money, but it's not really doing ufology any justice. You know what I mean?
Totally agree. That really frustrates me, and it's one of the things I probably get a bit fired up on X, is that when there is blatant engagement farming and there's blatant pursuit of clicks and views, that really frustrates me. So I usually am quick to call out someone that I can see is just trying to farm for engagement, because unfortunately people do, they do fall for it. Again, maybe no fault of their own, but they are being manipulated, and it really frustrates me that people take advantage of their audience and manipulate them in the interest of clicks and views and revenue.
And sometimes you got to keep in mind that it's the government agencies as well. They have a setup where they infiltrate all these little groups, and they just mess with your heads.
Well, I'm not sure if I've been exposed to that personally, but I mean, you only have to look at I mean, I'm not a big fan at all, but Rick Doty and his disinformation campaign against Paul Benowitz and Linda Moulton Howe, and Bill Moore. You've certainly got reports of infiltration into the UFO community historically. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are people keeping tabs on what the UFO community talks about and engages in spaces this day and age on X.
Haven't you noticed it on Reddit?
I'm not massively engaged on Reddit, so I post to Reddit, but I don't really read a lot of stuff in Reddit because I find my time is mostly preoccupied on X. That's where I have most of my engagement.
I thought you was mostly on Reddit. You see, that's where
we came in contact. Yeah. Well, I never was quite sure how to use Reddit back in the day, and then I got a bit of a crash course and I started posting. So I probably post more on Reddit than I do engaging on Reddit and looking at other content.
That's the best way to go.
Yeah, and X. I mean, there are some good articles that I've come across from researchers that I respect. Jeff Cruikshank used to post quite frequently on Reddit. But in terms of engagement and people that that I engage with most frequently, it's typically on X.
See, I didn't believe what I said to you until I went on Reddit. And then I noticed that there seems to be several different camps on Reddit.
Okay, yep.
And there's one camp that calls out another camp and says they're disinformation. And it still goes on now. Still goes on now. Like,
yeah, that happens on
some...
X as well. You've got folks that, you know, call out people being paid disinformation agents, and I for the most part try and ignore a lot of the noise that is on social media, because you can you can kind of get sucked into it and invest and just throw away a lot of your time in pointless back and forth arguments, which I've been guilty of engaging in over time. But I try and stay, you know, focused on what's of interest to me. If ever I hear anything with the word Australia in it and it's connected to UFO, that really piques my interest, and I try and take note of that and do further research or file it away. But yeah, like we were saying before, Nick, it can be, social media can be a bit of a cesspool, so you need to be careful.
Yeah, I upload these old school documentaries. I got some old VHS tapes that are not available on the internet, and I convert it to digital and upload it to my YouTube channel. And one of these VHS tapes was called Aliens Reasons to Believe, and it had Linda Moulton Howe in there. And she was talking about Richard Doty and how he was spreading like misinformation, like he drove that guy Paul Benowitz insane. And she was saying about Richard sort of spreading disinformation on her behalf. And it was quite like, wow, it's like, this is probably still going on now, actually, most likely, to be honest with you, but it's spotting who's actually doing it. I mean, people say that Lou Elizondo and them lot, you know, those, you know, again, it's all speculation really, but I think we really got to be careful what information is coming forward, and should we take these people seriously, because again, it could be a distraction to push people in a different direction, you know what I mean? Because ufology back in the 90s was quite simple compared to what it is now. You know, it's aliens are now demons, you know, they're coming from the interdimensional realm. They could be, you know, on the spacecraft, you know, it could be a number of things now. Inner Earth. It could be, the conversation is so mixed and so all over the place.
Totally agree. Again, these different narratives. I mean, the big one, the competing narratives that we're hearing from the US, you know, the official line of the US government is move along, folks, nothing to see here. People are just misidentifying top secret military aircraft as UAP or thinking it's extraterrestrial, which is a stark contrast to what we're hearing in testimony before Congress for several years now. You know, the likes of David Grush, Lou Elizondo, and other witnesses. So yeah, you know, what is real, what is not. That's what we're trying to decipher, and it is challenging. And I feel for people that are coming into this topic brand new, and I think you'll see an influx of new people get interested in the topic after the day Disclosure Day comes out, you know, in the coming months, to Spielberg's new film, because it is quite hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, and you just got to be mindful of that and keep that in the back of your head.
But Spielberg's film is just a film, though. It's not a documentary, so it's entertainment. It's not going to open up any doors or anything.
It won't. But I think entertainment
plays people.
Absolutely, I think what, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind did, and Contact did, and Disclosure Day, I think it will, you know, get people excited about the prospect and the topic, and it may then think, oh, I remember seeing something on 60 Minutes, or there was a congressional hearing a couple of years back, and there was this guy, David Grush. It might then get them interested in the topic, and you might have more people start exercising some curiosity about it. So, but, you know, unfortunately, there are so many rabbit holes that you can go down that lead to nowhere in this topic. So it is challenging to find reputable sources of information, and that's why I have a number of, you know, folks that I trust, that I kind of rely on for information, because entertainment is a big part of this topic. UFO-tainment, I think, has been thrown out there many times. So and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be entertained with this topic. I think that's fine. I mean, I find the topic entertaining. I like watching, films and documentaries. I can't wait to see Spielberg's film because I'm a big fan of Spielberg. But for researchers and those that just want the truth, I think you really have to, be mindful of, what your source of information is, because there is such misinformation, disinformation out there, and just bad information. Again, it's tough separating the wheat from the chaff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
it's like you make a very good point now. I'm sorry, Grant. If you need to.
No, I was going to say I'm probably going to have to get going because my kids are probably starting to arc up and want breakfast. So I'll have to go in a few minutes.
All right, thank you. Well, I have one quick question. Well, from Black Dot. I'm doing it right now. Black Dot wants to know, what information do you think there is to disclose?
Well, so there's been, if you've been following what RO has put out, they put out a few years ago their historical report, volume 1 of their historical report on the US government's involvement in the UAP UFO topic. And there was a stunning report, and this has been reported by, I believe, was it the Washington Post? I can't remember the magazine, the newspaper, one of the news outlets, about there being this decades-long hazing program called Yankee Blue. That was, a kind of a fictional program that the U.S. Air Force would read in new people in the Air Force to this program, Yankee Blue, which was about there being a real, crash retrieval program, and that UFOs were extraterrestrial in origin, and this was all a joke. It was all a hazing program that was run as a gag for decades by the US Air Force, and that a lot of the recruits that were pulled into this fictional program thought it was legitimate. And the RO's position is, well, it was this Yankee Blue program that has really, caught fire and got out of control, and a lot of people have taken this as being a real program, and it's just got out of control for decades, and it spread like wildfire. Well, we haven't yet seen any documentary evidence regarding Yankee Blue. So RO is making this assertion that it was a fictional program. Well, where's the data to back it up? For me as a researcher, I'm as much interested in seeing information on real UFO cases, data pertaining to observations of UAP that can't be explained. But I'm also really interested to see any data about there being deliberate misinformation campaigns in the decades past, because we know that Project Blue Book was largely an effort to debunk the whole topic and put out information that, move along, folks, there's nothing to see here. So I'm interested to see information that is, points to these real observations of real anomalous objects, which RO says about 1 to 3% of its caseload is truly anomalous. But I'm also interested to see information about these, this reported hazing program that may be caught like wildfire in the decades past, called Yankee Blue. That's information that I'm interested to see, and I think that's information that we'll see disclosed, if not from RO, by as a result of Trump's directive for files to be released. And hopefully Trump's commitment to transparency will expedite the release of the information that RO has collected on Yankee Blue. So, and Kona Blue is another one. And those that follow the Robert Bigelow and his BASS team, their effort as part of the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Applications Program, ORSAP. It's come to light as a result of RO's efforts that there was a prospective special access program called Kona Blue that was to be a continuation of ORSAP that really continued a lot of the investigatory efforts into the phenomenon. And we've seen some good information on Kona Blue, but the likes of James Lakatsky, who is the head of ORSAP, has said that Kona Blue really never ended. It's been an ongoing program. So, but where's the evidence to support that? So that's they're the kind of documentary that's the kind of documentary evidence and files that I'm looking forward to looking at from a historical perspective.
Good question, man, and great answer.
Good one. Well, look, I'm going to have to gents, but I've really enjoyed having a chat with you. Hopefully it's been of interest to your audience, and yeah, would love to continue the conversation down the road if there's an opportunity.
I would love to have you. I'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely. It's been
a pleasure.
Fantastic speaking to you, Grant, and thank you for giving us your insight and your wealth of knowledge in terms of ufology and especially the Westall case. Fantastic.
Happy to be on with you guys. It's been a fun conversation. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this, man.
Thank you. No problem at all for taking the time.
And I will message you the name of that sighting.
Yeah, please do. I'll be keen to read up on that if I haven't, because I'll be honest and say my my knowledge of historical cases in my own backyard needs a bit of work. You know, Keith Basterfield and Bill Chalker are my go-to whenever there's a case I don't know about, because I'm pretty much post 1996 when the Royal Australian Air Force said, move along, folks, nothing to see here. That's kind of from there to date is where I've put my focus on, but the historical cases are certainly fascinating. Yeah. So yeah, please feel free to flick that across if you find it.
I'd like to. I will do. I got it. I know where it is. I got it. I would like to cover a Frederick case at a later time. Yeah, I'd like to cover that because that's another great case. And
that's a fascinating case.
Did they ever find his plane or his wreckage?
It's been alleged that there was wreckage of his plane that was recovered, but that's never been, I believe, definitively verified. And there's a new book that a researcher has actually just put out. George Simpson authored a book a while back called Nothing on Radar, and there's a new book that's been authored by a pilot who was friends with or knew of Frederick Valentich. I can't remember the title of the book. But it's the Valentich case is a fascinating one because you can actually listen, and it's a very chilling recording to listen to. Yeah, you can actually listen to the audio recording between Fred Valentich and air traffic control. Yeah, it's pretty chilling to listen to. So, but that would be a great case to dive into.
He actually says there's a saucer above him, I believe he said.
Yeah, he says it's not an aircraft. He's seeing something that is. He can't explain, and he doesn't recognize it to be an aircraft, and it's buzzing around his plane. And was that the reason why his plane was lost, was never recovered? Was there some catastrophic incident that was a result of that encounter? That's what's been hypothesized. But that's a fascinating case, another fascinating cold case.
Yeah, I'd love to cover that. So we'll put that there, and I'll see if you can come on, if you want to come on.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know it's awkward for you at the time. Thank you. That's cool, man. That's really great. Thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Much love, man.
All right. Take care.
Bye, guys. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
And you too.
Thank you.
Take care. Cheers.
Wow. What a great guest, man.
Brilliant. That was fantastic. Yeah.
Did not disappoint.
Did not disappoint. No, that was... I have to admit, a wealth of knowledge to do with this case. So, yeah, suck it, debunkers.
Yeah, and suck it, Chris. I was going to ask him what's his thought on Chris, but I couldn't remember his last name. So,
Chris Buxo. Yeah. So I hope that was insightful for you guys in chat and for the people watching this in the future. The Westall case is definitely up there as one of the most intriguing UFO sightings in the 60s.
It reminded me a bit of Pentuck. Remind me a bit of that, because the other thing I forgot to ask him was the driver you know, the guy that was driving the car, and then the only reason why he reported what he saw is because the same tree that he was being veered into, another car hit it and died.
Was that Pentuck? I don't think it was, mate.
No, that was Westall. But my point with Pentuck was, and Westall, there seemed to have been activities going on days leading up to this mass sighting.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah,
So-
yeah, of course, yeah.
And there was activities going on for a couple of days leading up to the big diamond-shaped object that Kaz saw.
Yeah, yeah. Good point, actually. Yeah, there was like a lead up to it. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. But anyways, I think that's it. We've hit 3 hours. Said to Nick, man, we'll be in and out in an hour.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't expecting Grant to go on that long. So, but yeah, we got a good couple of hours out of him, which is beautiful.
Yeah, because he only said he could give us an hour, and he so again, thank you guys, and thank you, Grant, for coming. But
Yeah.
before I go, I want to end this on a super cool note. Now, I'm gonna start this off on something that's not cool, but how it ended was kind of cool, or what transpired was kind of cool. Right. So over the weekend, I believe there was a gala dinner, and President Trump was there, and some shooting took on. You heard about this? They called it an assassination attempt. You heard about this? I'm not asking opinions. I'm just asking if you heard about it. That's all I'm
I
asking.
heard the fake of
All
it,
right.
yeah.
So while this happened, yeah, there was this guy, and I mean, he went viral, but I had to say, now there is cool, and there is super cool, and then there is this guy.
Did he grab a woman's tit? Is that the one you're showing?
Come on, man, you were so cool. This guy is so cool here. Now check this out. Now people are running for cover and everything. This guy still sits there, and he's calmly eating his dinner. Have I got it in larger? Look at this guy. Just sits up, has a look what's going on, carries on eating his dinner. And I'm telling you, there is cool, and there is this guy cool. So on that note, man, that's where I'm going. In crisis, just always remember, try and be as cool as this guy. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that. No.
Can you imagine? Shots are being fired, whether they're fake or not. You just stand up, have a look, sit back down, carry on with your steak tartare.
That's probably what I'll do, mate, to be honest. If there's pudding involved, I'm like, if it's literally a nuclear bomb was being dropped, I'd be like, I'm just going to finish my pudding.
Oh, man. I'm telling you, that is the cool that we all need to be, man. When everybody's losing their heads, you're keeping yours. So on that note, man, thank you for joining us. Big shout out to Grant Lavac. And guys, we may have him on again. So
yeah, great show.
So until next time, guys, stay blessed and keep safe.
Take care, guys. Thanks for joining. Many thanks to Grant.
Hidden underbelly, deep and wide, chasing saucers in the starry skies. Truth uncovered where the shadows lie. Big up our brother, he's the cosmic guy. All hidden, all hidden. Your light is never forbidden. All hidden, all hidden. The truth you've always given. Whispers of the cosmos in the night. Shine finding answers through your second sight. Investigations that you bring to light. Mysteries unfolding your endless fight. All hidden, all hidden. Your light is never forbidden. Hidden, all hidden. The truth you've always given. Saucer trails and cosmic tales. Through the static you prevail. Hidden brother on the case, bringing truth to every space.